Hey guys, this is the WalterFootball.com After Dark show for October 25th, 2023. We're doing our Week 8 NFL picks against the spread video. Joined once again by Jacob Camenker from the Sporting News. Jacob, how are you and how's your Week 7?
I'm doing great. My week 7 was pretty good. I went 8-5 against the spread overall. Had a few misses. We had more disagreements last week than we usually do. You were dead right about the Ravens and the Lions game, and I should have listened to you on that one because the problem there was Jared Goff in that weather, and you were right that the Lions had more reason to not be getting up for that game compared to the Ravens. So I had some easy misses like that. I think Bills Patriots is one that I normally would have been on the Patriots, but we had 3 consecutive losing weeks where we were on the Patriots and we just could not back them again. Neither you nor I bet on that game, but when the Patriots won, I was kind of like, this isn't a big surprise. Buffalo's been banged up. So, I had a few of those misses where I'm like, oh, yeah, I wish I had done that one differently. 49ers were another one. Vikings came with a really good coaching game plan, but the number one thing that I took away from that was how important Trent Williams is to that offense, because without him, Brock Purdy was under pressure and did not look comfortable. So, learned some lessons in my 5 losses of the week. That's always a good thing. And I feel like, generally speaking, though, we had a pretty good week in prognosticating things, and we're on the right side in a lot of the things. We only had one loss where I was like kind of irked because the Cardinals missed a field goal where the laces were in on Matt Prater. And if he just makes that, we cover that without a problem. But that was just some bad luck. But everything else kind of went according to plan. So I can't really complain too much. Pretty solid overall. How are you doing and how was your week?
Yeah, it's weird that we had so many disagreements and yet we both had winning records. Like you went 8-5, I was 7-6. That Arizona game was so tilting because not only did Prater miss that 34-yard field goal because the laces were in, they also tried this weird fake punt on a 4th and 9 at midfield that gave Seattle a chance to hit the field goal to cover. And it was like one of the worst plays because like they didn't even throw beyond the sticks. Like they threw like a 3-yard pass, kind of like they thought it was like a 4th and 3 instead of 4th and 9. And if that were the case, it would have been a good play. But they really screwed that up. And as soon as that happened, I'm like, oh man, here we go. They're gonna kick the field goal again. It's like second week in a row. We had an underdog and like a score at the very end kind of screwed us over. And that was my biggest play of the week. But outside of that, I hit most of my big plays. So like no other complaints. I should say I'm disappointed in myself that I didn't bet the Patriots. Like I knew heading into like week 7, like I even tweeted this. I was like, or at least I wrote it on my site. I'm like, it's like a lock that the Patriots are going to cover because, like, first of all, they should have covered against the Raiders, and second of all, like, this is the first time I'm not betting them. So, like, it's just like week 4, and of course they're going to cover. I don't know. I guess like we were burned too many times, but at the same time, maybe you have to kind of like stick to your convictions. And I think we both knew that the Patriots were the right play. It's just like we just couldn't do it for some reason. But like if someone hadn't bet the Patriots heading into week 7, they were like probably like, oh, of course the Patriots are going to cover, right? So it's all a matter of like your past experiences and how you're looking at things, right?
Yeah, 100%. If we hadn't been burned by them 3 straight weeks, I think they cover against the Raiders, we probably bet on them against the Bills. So I think that's one of those situations where you tell yourself in your head, you got to just stick to your guns. Like the Sharps with the Broncos. We saw that this week. And I think that was one of the games we were different on. Not that I didn't bet on the game. I don't know if you did. I don't think you did either. But, the Sharps were still on the Broncos last week against the Packers, and they ended up being right. So it was a pretty solid week in terms of bounce backs for those teams that, a lot of people have been, or a lot of the Sharps have been backing, but hadn't had success quite yet.
Yeah, I didn't bet that one. I mean, I feel like that could have gone either way. It was pretty close to a field goal at the end, but Jordan Love threw like a horrible interception. G Chuck saying Matt Ray Finkel Prater,
Yep.
Finkel Einhorn. I haven't seen that movie in forever, but definitely a classic. Josh asking, would you trade Carr for Roshan Johnson and Jonnu Smith?
20-man PPR. Wow.
That's it's pretty rough. 20-man PPR. My roster is Russ, JT, Aaron Jones, Tyreek Hill, Christian Kirk, Cole Kmet, Jacoby Myers. Well, I mean, you have Russell Wilson, so I can't imagine you're starting Derek Carr. So, yeah, I guess. I mean, I'd rather have 2 good players instead of, well, I can't say two good players. I'd rather have like two functional players than one functional player and 20 man. I think that makes sense. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that gives you good depth at running back too. Like Roshan Johnson, when he comes back from his concussion, I think they'll ride the hot hand with Deontay Foreman. But as they fall further back in the division race, probably evens out more. Johnson will be getting more of the carries as the year goes on. So if you're upgrading your depth, that's fine. And for some godforsaken reason, Arthur Smith really enjoys just spreading the ball around to everybody. So if he ends up with Jonnu Smith on the field, he's gonna get some catches.
Yeah, John Smith's definitely involved. It feels like everyone's involved except for Bijan Robinson at this point. I before we get to the week 8 picks, I want to discuss something with you that I brought up last week, and I thought like the results were pretty telling. Remember before we talked about the week 7 games last week, I pointed out how many bogus covers there were, whereas like a team won, but the other team won both in yards, net yards and yards per play. Just like as a brief like recap, in week 6, the Redskins beat the Falcons, but the Falcons had more yards and yards per play. Same thing with Vikings, the Bears. The Bears outgained them and had more yards per play. Same thing, Bengals, Seahawks. Seahawks outgained the Bengals. The Bengals won. Texans, Saints had the advantage there. Jaguars, Colts. Minshew melted down, but the Colts had more yards and yards per play. There's a couple others. I think there's at least one more. Jets, Eagles. The Eagles had more yards and yards per play. I'm bringing this up because outside of the Saints, every team that had more yards and yards per play but lost ended up covering this past weekend. The Falcons beat the Buccaneers like pretty easily. Like they won by 3, but they turned the ball over twice at the 1-yard line somehow. The Bears ended up crushing the Raiders. The Seahawks ended up covering against the Cardinals. They won by 10. I mentioned the Saints didn't, but they could have at the end. The Colts, they ended up covering against the Browns, and of course the Eagles on Sunday night. It just goes to show if like you're really paying attention to how these teams are playing, you could really benefit. Kind of upset that I didn't see a couple of these. Like I feel like maybe being on the Eagles side instead of the Dolphins, maybe I could have done that or something like that. And then like Colts Browns, that was a weird game because the Browns quarterback got injured, but still, I mean, any thoughts on that? I think it's kind of like interesting to look at that.
Yeah, I think paying attention to that absolutely has value. I think the one that I missed on was the Colts Browns. I know that the quarterback got injured, but we knew that was a bad spot for the Browns, and we knew that the Colts had played better the previous week. So maybe we should have seen the cover coming. But that was just a weird game for their defense overall. They just kind of didn't show up after beating the 49ers. But I kind of had seen that coming with the Eagles, where you were dead on about the Ravens-Lions game, and I was on the wrong side of that one. And I think I redeemed myself with the Eagles over Dolphins pick. And I think that the whole thing kind of boiled down to my theory about the Dolphins was they were going to struggle against teams that are well-rounded and have a good defense because they had beaten cupcakes. But the other part of it was the Eagles' loss to the Jets wasn't as bad as it seemed. Like Jalen Hurts just had a terrible game with turnovers. And if he just hadn't turned the ball over as much, I feel like that's kind of the equalizer. You look at the teams that turn the ball over a lot, and sometimes they repeat that. But if they cut down on those and they're consistently outgaining their opponents, those are the teams that are undervalued. And sometimes you can predict turnovers. Sometimes you can't, but like with quarterback like Jalen Hurts, most weeks he's not going to have that many turnovers, and that kind of corrected itself that week.
Yeah, except if you're the Colts and you keep turning the ball over and it doesn't matter because you have like big plays. That game was amazing. The Browns defense at times looked like the '85 Bears, and then they look like I don't know, the Bears of week 3, or the Broncos of week 3 this year. Like it was so like dramatic. Like they would be like, all right, big play by Garrett, like touchdown or like interception or strip sack recovery, and then it'd be like, okay, 80-yard touchdown the other way. It's like I don't understand what was happening in that game. And that 2-point conversion was ridiculous. Like they tried so hard to score. They got those 2 bogus like penalties. Like they scored. I'm like, all right, we have a chance. We have a chance to cover here or at least push. And then there's a PR strong up the middle, like for 1-yard loss. I don't get it. Like
I was watching that play and I was like, did the snap get aborted or like did they blow the whistle or they try? And then I was like, oh, that was actually the try. It was so straight. Like at that point in the game, too, I had given up on us covering because I was like, it's going to take something monumental with the way the game was swinging back and forth. So at that point, I had already chalked it up as a loss. But when they went with that play, I was like, man, what are you doing, Stefanski? Like, come on, call something. And maybe he just didn't want to risk PJ Walker throwing it and him somehow throwing a 100-yard pick six to lose the game. But it was very strange. It was a strange play call.
That's actually a good point. I wonder if that was in the back of his mind. A pick two would have won the game for the other team. So but like, why go for two anyway? Like, I don't know. Whatever. Weird. It's a weird play.
Yeah, I think obviously you go for two because it would put you up three. You have to try it, but I think Stefanski's mind, he's probably like, well, they're not really going to get into field goal range, and I don't want to gift them this situation. But yeah, just running it straight up the middle with Pierce Armstrong. I wish someone had asked him about that, because if he had said I was worried about a pick two or something, that would have been like massive. Like people would have flipped out about that. But maybe we're just thinking of it now. So.
Yeah, that is true. I was thinking, like, if you wanted to make sure you won by exactly less than three, like that's the right play. What about that hit? What hit are you talking about? In the Green Bay game, it was by Kareem Jackson. You mean? I didn't like. That was weird. Like he hit his shoulder. Like I mean, it looked like his helmet snapped backward, but I didn't. And then he got suspended for 4 games. I was kind of like really confused by that.
Yeah, that was his suspension upon appeal was reduced to 2 today. That happened like just a few hours ago. But watching that live, I did not think it warranted a disqualification. I was like, all right, I get why that was maybe a penalty, because defenseless receiver, he's hitting him pretty hard. Like even that, I was like, all right, I could see it. But once he was disqualified, I was like, oh, this is clearly a repeat offender thing. I think the NFL was just mad at Kareem Jackson because he's had a lot of these borderline hits, but this year, and he's been fined a lot. So I think they were trying to make an example out of him in that moment. But, of all the hits, I think the worst one I've seen was his on this year was his on Logan Thomas that knocked him out with a concussion. That one was just plain dirty, plain bad. And maybe he didn't mean anything by it, but it was pretty ugly. The one on Musgrave wasn't great, but I didn't think it was dirty.
Yeah, I didn't think so either. Northwest Seahawks fan bringing up, didn't that happen against the Falcons, the 2-point conversion to the pick two? The Falcons against the Chiefs a few years back, but they lost on a pick two. Yeah, it was the year the Falcons went to the Super Bowl, 2016. I remember that. Yeah, I think I had the Chiefs in that game too, so I was pretty happy about it. So I actually did remember that, but it's like good to bring that up. I mean, coaches might be thinking about that, so it's interesting. All right. Anyway, we're gonna get to the week 8 picks. I also have a Rainmaker pack to open at the very end, so that'll be exciting. But before we get to that, please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video, visit the link in the description for the merch store. All that would mean a lot. If you want to help to support the show, word of mouth is the best way. So just send the link to someone who you think might enjoy the show and they don't know about it. Be really appreciated. And we're kind of closing in on 4,000 subscribers, so like that'd be cool to get some subs. So yeah, all that would mean a lot. The first game here is the Thursday night game. We have Buccaneers to the Bills. This game opened up Bills -8. It's up to 8.5. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, so I'm on the Buccaneers here, and the reason being is maybe this is me trying to make up for last week not fading the Bills, but I like the idea of fading a team that is missing a lot of pieces as a favorite of more than a touchdown here. And the logic is, without Matt Milano and Tre'Davious White on defense, the Bills are not nearly as good. They still have a good pass rush, which should get to Baker Mayfield, which gives me a little pause in this matchup. But my thought process here in going with the Buccaneers is twofold. One, I think Tampa Bay can keep this game close because they have the passing attack needed to kind of attack the Bills secondary where they're missing cornerbacks and where Matt Milano is not there. Their back seven just isn't nearly as strong without those guys. So passing wise, they should have a good game. And two, even if Baker Mayfield struggles under pressure or has some turnovers early in the game, I think they could be positioned for the backdoor cover. So you're kind of getting 2 scenarios that I could see playing out where the Buccaneers could end up doing well. So I'm going to back them here. And I like their defense. Their defense has played pretty well this year. I'm not entirely sure they're going to shut down the Bills, but Josh Allen's banged up right now. Ken Dorsey, as our commenters here are saying, has not been calling very good games. And if Allen can't run the ball and he has to do more as a passer, he's clearly capable of doing that. But against a good defense, the Buccaneers are going to figure out a way to at least slow him down. So I think this game ends up being closer on a short week than people think. I think the Bills have the coaching advantage with Sean McDermott over Todd Bowles. But if we're picking offensive coordinators, it's Dave Canales without a doubt over Ken Dorsey right now. So I think that helps make things a little more even for the Buccaneers. So I just think this line's too high. One more thing to consider for the mojo factor for all you out there. Baker Mayfield has played 4 Thursday night football games during his career. He is 4-0 in those games. And I want to note 2 specific games that he won. One, he came off the bench against the Jets and won, which was pretty impressive because he had like no practice reps with Hugh Jackson as his coach. So I know the Jets weren't a good team either, but Baker Mayfield ended up making a comeback win in that one, so that was cool. The other the most recent Thursday night win he's had was last year when he was on the Rams for literally less than 48 hours and he led a comeback win over the Raiders. So maybe he just plays better on Thursday night than everyone else out there. It could also mean absolutely nothing, but I just think that just goes to show you that Mayfield's a little bit live for these types of games, so it's going to be close, I think.
Yeah, we're on opposite sides to start this, but I'm not like super confident in this pick, so I don't feel too bad because I know your Thursday track record, which is pretty pristine. But my thinking here is like, okay, so the Buccaneers, they almost won against the Falcons. I brought this up, but like really they didn't because they were outgained by a wide margin. If Atlanta hadn't turned the ball over 3 times in the red zone, including twice at the 1-yard line, like Atlanta would have won by a lot more. And then, like, say, for example, if like instead of winning 16-13, if Atlanta had won like 27-13 or 30-13, like it could have been, I think this line would be a little bit higher. It might be like 10, and that would bring us to the magic number on Thursday night, which is like where double-digit favorites on Thursday Night Football are 25-10 against the spread all time. It's just because like the better team tends to have a bigger advantage on a short work week. And the Bills have a ton of injuries, and like that's what concerns me here is that's why I'm not betting this game. Like the Bills are just missing way too many players. But even with those guys out, I still think they're a lot better than the Buccaneers. Like I think the Buccaneers suck. I said this last week when I was pretty confident about Atlanta. Like their 3 wins are so bogus. Like their first win against Minnesota, Kirk Cousins had so many turnovers. Minnesota outgained Tampa in that game. Week 2, that was the game where Justin Fields ran only twice after the opening drive for some reason, and yet the Bears are still only down 3 in the final couple of minutes. And then the other game they won was against the Saints, where Derek Carr was so injured he can throw the ball downfield. Like those are the Tampa's 3 wins. Outside of that, they've gotten blown out twice, and then the third game they easily could have gotten blown out against Atlanta. Like I think there's a good chance the Bills come off another loss here, and they just stomp on the Buccaneers. Like I could see that happening. But then again, with all those injuries, it could open up a backdoor possibility. You have those 2 receivers for Tampa against a secondary missing their top corner. So it's a pretty tough game to handicap because of all those injuries. If the Bills are healthier, I'd be all over the Bills here. But it's hard to bet Buffalo at the moment, and I can't bet them. But I am going to side with them here for no units.
I totally get why you're siding with them too, and I want to make it clear I'm not like super gung ho about the Buccaneers in this spot. I'm just I'm a little down on Buffalo. I've got the Buccaneers penciled in for a unit here, which everyone knows is my minimum play on Thursday night. If you've been watching the show, I refuse to sit out Thursday night games. I get too excited, and this year I remain undefeated. I think I have 2 pushes on Thursday night or something like that in 7 weeks, because last week I did swap sides. You had the Jaguars first and I had the Saints first, but then I swapped sides to be with the Jaguars. That was our 4th disagreement that ended up being kaput, and it was the right call. So check back Thursday. We'll see if I'm feeling any better about the Bills, but just my logic is I don't want to back a pretty beat up team as a big favorite against any team. I get your point though. The Buccaneers are definitely overrated, and I agree with you on that. But I think there's going to be some better spots to fade them than this one. But hey, we'll see if I'm right. I got to be wrong at some point, right?
Well, you never know. I mean, maybe you'll just get them all correct forever with these Thursday night games. I don't know. Maybe one of us will swap. Maybe it'll be me changing to Tampa. Like I said, I'm not like very confident in Buffalo. If this were a Sunday game, I'd probably be on Tampa. But I think with the short work week, that's going to really hurt the Buccaneers' chances. But anyway, like I said, not really super confident in this one. I am more confident in this game. We have we have Saints at Colts. This line opened up Saints -1.5 now. Looks like the Colts are favored by 1 now. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, so I had a little bit of a tough time with this one. So I think this might be a tough spot for the Colts. I think they're coming off that close loss to the Browns, and the Browns were in a tough spot after beating the 49ers. They were kind of came out a little flat. We saw that with the defense would make some big plays, but then they let up a lot of big ones. Like, it was strange. I feel like the Browns just didn't have the same like follow through energy they had throughout the game against the 49ers. And I know they lost their quarterback midway through it too, but it's not like Deshaun Watson was vastly outplaying PJ. I almost said PJ Tucker. Welcome to the NBA season. PJ Walker throughout that game. At the same time, I'm worried about the Saints' offensive line. Like, that could be a mess if they're not healthier than they were on Thursday night, because Andrews Pete was playing left tackle. Andrews Pete is a left guard in the league for a reason. They drafted him to be a tackle, and it did not pan out. So I'm going to need to see the Saints offensive line get a little bit healthier before I'm going to back them in this spot. The positive for the Saints, Alvin Kamara has been looking good since he came back, and I think their offense is better for that. And the Colts, their run defense has taken a little bit of a hit because Grover Stewart is out with a suspension. So I kind of think that this might end up being a tough spot for the Colts, where Gardner Minshew's going up against the top 10 defense this year. And I know that they allowed a lot of yardage late to the Jaguars. That was on a short week for the Saints. So I'm leaning towards the Saints here. I think this is a little bit of an overreaction to the Colts kind of looking really good against the Browns. And I just think that was more about the Browns than it was about the Colts. And I think Gardner Minshew will struggle more in this spot. So where this line has moved in the direction of the Colts, I think I'm going to be on the Saints here. But I penciled this in for 0 units. So I would like to hear what you think, because if we're on the same side, maybe you can make me a little more confident.
Yeah, we're on the same side. I think there's a negative sentiment here with the Saints. People suddenly don't like them a lot. I saw power rankings today. I like looking at other power rankings to see like where other people like in the media and stuff like that value teams, and you could kind of see like which teams are overvalued or undervalued. And like I continuously saw the Saints in like the mid-20s or early 20s, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the Saints offense. Like they have offensive line issues, and I don't like Derek Carr, but they have good skill position players. But the big selling point about the Saints is that they have the 5th ranked defense in the NFL. They have a really underrated pass rush. They can eliminate number 1 corners or number 1 receivers with their top corner, Marshawn Lattimore. They play great over the middle of the field. They seem to do everything well defensively except for cover slot corners. So you got to like Josh Downs in this game, but still, like the Saints are like so much better. Like if you look at like the Saints offense and Saints defense, and then Colts offense, Colts defense, like Saints defense is by far the best unit on the field in this game. And and the results almost show it. Like I mentioned when I was doing the the analysis of those week 6 misleading games, where like the Saints outgained the Texans both in yards and yards per play. Yet that didn't translate to week 7 against the Jaguars, but I feel like it's going to eventually, where like the Saints are kind of underrated, and they should be able to win more than they have, and like they should have beaten the Texans. Like they were the better team, and they just didn't. So I think they're the better team against the Colts. Especially with the Colts having a backup quarterback against a top 5 defense. Like I think that's going to really hurt them. We saw Minshew self-destruct with like, how many turnovers does he have in the past 2 games? It's like insane. He had 3 interceptions against the Jaguars. He had 2 lost fumbles and I think an interception against the Browns. So like 6 in total in the past 2 games. And like now he's playing another great defense. I think that's going to keep continuing. And I don't expect the Colts to hit as many big plays like they did against the Browns. Like I just don't think it's going to happen. And one more thing, like the Saints' big issue has been their red zone offense, which has been like horrendous. But it's worth noting the Colts are bottom 10 in red zone defense, so it could be a good opportunity for the Saints to finally score some touchdowns. And I think we kind of saw them like have more success against the Jaguars in that regard later in the game. When they scored quickly on that drive, like 3 times, and they easily could have won at the end if there wasn't that drop. So I like the Saints here. I think they should be favored. So getting them as an underdog feels pretty good.
Yeah, my first blush instinct was that the Saints should be favored as well. So I definitely see the case for being high on them. I'll probably actually end up betting them. I had 0 units penciled in, but I think that was probably in my own head. I was thinking, oh, the Saints, they're just not that great on offense, but they're good enough. And I think Alvin Kamara against this defense, which had its share of struggles against a Browns team. I know that they had a lot of turnovers too, but they gave up some big plays to Jerome Ford, and I feel like Alvin Kamara can repeat that success. Keep a close eye on the offensive line, though. If the Saints O-line is more banged up than I'm hoping coming off of a mini bye, then I might not bet this one. But if they get some guys back up there and Andrews Pete no longer has to play left tackle, which please don't make us watch that, that would be good news.
Kevin asking what happened to Darius Leonard. He changed his name to Shaq, and then he got injured a lot, and he couldn't. Now he's just not very good. I don't know what happened to him. He used to be such a great player, and he's just completely fell off the map in the past couple of years.
Yeah, I can't explain it either, but it used to be that if he was out of a game, we'd fade the Colts, and if he was in, we'd back him, and it was money to do that. But Now Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed are seemingly making more plays than him every time I watch.
They've been a lot better. So maybe he'll turn things around. But I think the injuries have kind of hurt his career. Tyson asking, Olave got arrested. Do you think that brings any distraction? I think if he was arrested for something pretty serious, mentioned domestic violence or something like that, or something that could really get him suspended. I think that could be a distraction, but. Driving 35 miles over the speed limit, you shouldn't do that, obviously, but it's not the worst thing you could do. So I don't think it's going to be a distraction. What do you think?
Yeah, we do not condone going 35 miles an hour over the speed limit, but I imagine that the team will just be don't do that again. And his teammates probably be yeah, that wasn't smart, was it? But they should be able to put that behind him. And I don't know how court proceedings for that sort of thing work, but I can't imagine it being too much of a factor this week.
Yeah, I like the I like the fact that I saw that he was wait, I played for the Saints, and the cop was so. Clearly, Falcons fan. He should have asked which team he liked the most at first. So, if the guy was I'm a Falcons fan, he should be oh, I'm Drake London. Just kind of lie about that. But anyway, so let's move on here. Jaguars to the Steelers. It's lined up in Jaguars -1.5. It's up to 2.5. Steelers find another way to win last week, despite they continuously keep getting outgained, but yet they keep finding ways to win. So we have Jaguars here, favored by 2.5. What do you like?
Yeah, so I feel like we have a pretty good beat on the Steelers right now. They're kind of alternate. When they're underdogs, I usually like to back them. But in this spot, I like the Jaguars, and there's a good reason for that. As you mentioned, the Steelers have been outgained in a lot of their recent games, and they have a 4-2 record, but that record is really a mirage based off how they've been playing, because if you look at some of their wins, and I know you can do this to a lot of teams, you can flip the results, but the Steelers ones particularly stand out because they had that win over the Browns where their defense played really, really well and set up, I think, 2 of the touchdowns, if not outright got them. And, that was against Deshaun Watson, who we all thought was going to take a step forward, but really hasn't been good at all and has been injured this year. So I feel like their narrow win over the Browns wasn't all that impressive because their offense didn't do too much. And then their win against the Steelers was pretty inexplicable. Win against the Ravens, pretty inexplicable because there was that late game interception that Joey Porter got that it didn't make any sense why they were throwing it in that manner, and that allowed the Steelers back into the game. And then their game against the Rams, even this last week, they were trailing for most of the game, and they rode their defense again to kind of finish that one off, forced Matthew Stafford into some mistakes, and that's what ultimately won them the game. And Kenny Pickett has had some clutch gene in him for his whole NFL career so far, but against a team like the Jaguars, it's going to be hard to repeat that because the Jaguars have a really good defense. It's hard to run on them. I know they kind of let go of the rope a little bit at the end of the game against the Saints, but they were without Tyson Campbell in that game. And when I first saw that in the starting lineup, I had forgotten he was out, and I was like, oh my God, they're really thin at cornerback. But Darius Williams looked good. If Tyson Campbell comes back for this game, Jaguars are going to be hard to move the ball on for a Steelers offense that relies on Kenny Pickett to do a lot of the dirty work because their run game isn't very good and won't be able to do much in this matchup. And then you look at the Jaguars side of things, and yeah, they've not maybe been as impressive as we'd like to see on them, but they've won 4 games in a row. They're 5-2. They're less than 3-point favorites in the spot. I know it's a tough road environment, and I know that they still need to get a little bit healthier on both sides of the ball. But the big sticking point for me and why I like the Jaguars here is because the pressure that's been applied to them in some of the wins. They beat the Bills and they beat the Falcons, 2 teams who have top 5 pressure rates. So that bodes well for their chances against the Steelers, who have a top 10 pressure rate. And I know a lot of people will say, well, they also lost to the Chiefs, who have the second best pressure percentage in the league. So does that concern you? My answer is no, because their defense really, really limited the Chiefs. Their offense just never got going in that game. But if they had even an average game on offense, they might have been able to win that one. So I think the Jaguars' performance against teams that get good pressure encourages me. So where this line is under 3, I'm going to back them in this spot. So I've got them penciled in for a unit. I have up to 3, depending on how the injury report shakes out for the Jaguars. But I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this game.
Yeah, we're gonna be on opposite sides here. I always want to back Mike Tomlin as an underdog. Not always, obviously there are exceptions, but he's 56-30 against the spread as an underdog, which is like pretty insane. And no, the Jaguars are the better team for sure, but man, the Steelers just find ways to win. And I think like 1 is an accident, 2 is a fluke. Like what's like 6? Because like that's it's like every single time like the Steelers are underdogs here at home, like they find ways to win, except if they're playing the 49ers apparently on opening day. Man, I like the Jaguars the past 2 games. I mentioned how the Steelers had that misleading win that I was talking about. There has to be a name for that, where they were outgained at yards and yards per play, but they ended up winning. But like the Jaguars haven't outgained their opponents since London. Like they were outgained by the Colts and also the Saints. And the Saints were, a drop touchdown away from going to overtime, and who knows, like they may have won that game. So I don't know. Like this is a tough spot. I don't love this game at all. Like you sound like you're more confident in your play than I am. I don't think I'm going to bet this game. I saw the sharp short on the Steelers earlier in the week, or I say earlier in the week, like earlier in the day actually. And it's kind of like it's almost evened out. So it's like it's still early. So like some big action is going to push that thing like pretty far. But like it does seem like the sharps like the Steelers a little bit. So that kind of like in a 50-50 game, I was like, okay, maybe I'll side with the sharps here. If this were 3, I would definitely like the Steelers a lot more. Just like not getting the full field goal kind of sucks. But I do like both teams. And also like the selling point for me with the Steelers is that they have Deontay Johnson back, which is like, it's a huge deal because all they had before was George Pickens. And now they have both George Pickens and Deontay Johnson. Like this is a Jaguar team that tends to allow some big plays downfield. So I like the Steelers a little bit, but not anything substantial.
If this line were 3, and it was earlier when I looked on Monday, when I looked yesterday, the line was 3. And I was thinking to myself, man, that's tough. I don't know which side to choose. I probably would have ended up on the Steelers there. But the logic that I'm having here, again, is just that I'm worried that the Steelers, I get that Deontay Johnson being back is definitely a boost to their offense. And I think that they will be better for it long term. But I think in games where they're going to be where the Jaguars are going to be able to force the Steelers to be one-dimensional, I think that's what will happen. I think it'll be a little bit harder for Kenny Pickett to throw just downfield consistently. Now, I could be wrong. Again, could be wrong about this. And I think the best play is probably to tease the Steelers here to +8.5, because I think that they won't get blown out at home, I don't think. But I could see the Jaguars winning by a touchdown here. So I'm backing the Jaguars here. I get that they haven't been as impressive as their record says they are. But I'm waiting for that breakout game from them. Then I think it's going to come, and I'm waiting for the Steelers letdown. And this feels like the spot where both could happen. But hey, if those trends continue and the Jaguars continue to come up short and the Steelers continue to win games that they shouldn't, then I'm just going to have to reassess whether that's going to be the normal for them.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do think the Jaguars are like they do have a lot of potential, but I also think the Steelers do too. Like if they can get Kenny Pickett to play on like an average level, they have the defense, they have the two receivers. I worry about the offensive line in the running game, but everything else, like the Steelers seem to have everything else. I bet both of these teams to win the Super Bowl. So I think that like either one could make a big run in the second half. Even like I know the Steelers have their bogus wins and like they played all those divisional games at home. Like they have to go on the road to Baltimore, Cleveland, and Cincinnati in the second half of the year, which could be tough. But if they can get Kenny Pickett to play better, I think the sky's sky's the limit for them, really. And then and I agree with what you said about the Jaguars too. Their defense is pretty impressive. It's just like their offense is a concern, and I worry about their offensive line protecting Lawrence against this pass rush. Like that's the main thing in this matchup I really worry about. So, like I said, I feel like this could go either way. As Kevin's saying, the Steelers can win games while losing almost every stat category. That's like par for the course of them. That's Mike Tomlin football. Like it's not just like 1, 2, 3 years. This has been the case since 2007. So, I don't know how he does it, but he gets it done that way.
He is like the complete opposite of Andy Reid in that they're both fantastic coaches. But Mike Tomlin wins in the most disgusting way possible. Every single, you're like, I hated watching that. I really did not enjoy this, but the team I'm backing won. And then, whereas with the Chiefs, you're like, oh man, this is a lot of fun to watch. It's high flying. Like I feel like those guys are just kind of like that. Tomlin, you watch, you're like, man, they're gonna win an ugly game, and this is really painful. And Chiefs, when they win, you're like, man, that was fun to watch.
Yeah, I wonder if that would still be the case if like Tomlin had Mahomes and like Andy Reid was coach of the Steelers. I wonder if like things would be different or like or it would still be the same. I don't know. I feel like it could go either way. Next game is Texans at the Panthers. I actually wrote this game up before the Week 7 games because both these teams were on bye. So I was like, I might as well get ahead with no. For some reason, there are no buys this week, which is like kind of bizarre. Anyway, this line opened at Texas -3, and it's still -3. Who do you like here?
Yeah, I like the Texans here. I know that the Panthers are going to win at some point, but I think this is a tough spot for them because the Texans are a little bit underrated right now. They're 3-3. But I feel like no one really believes in them entirely. And I know that they've had some flukier results, like that game against the Saints. They won that one despite being outgained, but I think that they are just talent-wise better than the Panthers right now. I think D'Amico Ryans is proving that he's a better coach than Frank Reich. We already kind of had assumed that would be the case after seeing Reich's end in Indianapolis, but the Panthers went through with it anyway. So what I'm seeing in this matchup is that the Panthers they have had trouble keeping games close. Even they've lost all of them, obviously, but they've only lost one game by fewer than 8 points. That was against the Saints in Week 2, and that was a spot that I think at the time we all were kind of thinking, oh, this is a great spot for them. The Saints are a little overrated at that point, and they couldn't even win. I think that game was at home. Don't quote me on that. So it was. That was the moment that I kind of knew, like, the Panthers probably were going to want to fade them more often than not. And I know that they're getting some players back. Austin Corbett being on the offensive line, that should help Bryce Young a little bit. And, you look at the line, you're like, oh, +3 at home. That looks pretty decent. But I think this is a trap line where the books are trying to get people to take the Panthers and trying to get people to say, oh, the Texans aren't that good. Why are they favorites on the road against the Panthers? And I think that the simple answer to that is that the Panthers haven't shown a reason to be favored yet. Now, not super into this game because it is C.J. Stroud, who is another rookie quarterback going on the road in a hostile environment. So that could potentially backfire if he has a rough outing, but he hasn't had one so far, and the Panthers defense just hasn't looked good to me. And look, they have some pieces that could get traded ahead of the trade deadline, so I don't know where their head's going to be at, whereas the Texans are more likely to keep all their guys kind of intact and keep that unit intact. Not that the NFL trade deadline is a huge deal, but I've actually heard some of the Panthers guys' names in the trade, the rumor mill at least. So could be a little bit of a distraction. So I'm going to side with the Texans here, but there's not really a ton of line value in this one, so I'm not sure I'm going to bet this game.
Yeah, I wrote the Texans on the site, but the more I think about it, the more I want to switch to Carolina. And I mean, here's why. Like, the Panthers haven't covered the spread this year, which is like crazy to think about thus far. But Their schedule has been so tough. Like they played Atlanta, they played the Saints, and the Saints are underrated. We talked about that. They played the Seahawks, they played the Lions, they played the Dolphins. Like their one easy game was against Minnesota, and like we just saw Minnesota beat the Niners. Like they really haven't had an easy game. Not that like Houston necessarily an easy game, but still, like I feel like the Panthers, despite not covering the spread, are a little underrated because like once they start playing like softer teams, like teams like near their level, they should be able to win some games. And getting Austin Corbett back, as you said, is a big deal. I want to see if they can get some of their defensive players back that they've been missing. If that's the case, then I think I may take the Texans. Like last time we saw the Texans, they beat the Saints. But as you know, it's kind of detailed earlier, the Texans were outgained both in yards and yards per play. It was just the Saints like continuously shooting themselves in the foot. I think if they play that game 100 times, I think the Saints win more than 50 occasions. So I think that, and like I think the Texans are overrated for that reason. Also, there are two other wins, and I keep harping on this, and hopefully it pays off eventually. But the Texans' two other wins were against the Jaguars in Week 3 when Jacksonville was sleepwalking after that Kansas City game before those two London games. And then Week 4 against the Steelers, where the Steelers had that tough schedule where they played the Browns Monday night and won. They played on the West Coast against the Raiders, and then they had their flight diverted a couple times. And then they were looking ahead to Baltimore. Like those are the Texans' 3 wins, like two wins against teams not focused at all, and then the third where they were outgained. Like I like their run defense is really bad. I feel like the Panthers should be able to run the ball with Sanders and Chuba Hubbard. So like I said, I put the Texans down on the site, but. And I guess part of that was maybe I shouldn't do write-ups in advance because I did that on like Saturday night, and I was like, okay, I'll get one out of the way here because we have 16 games coming up. But like I said, I've had a lot more time to think about this game than the other ones, and the more I think about it, I think the more the Panthers make sense. I just wish we got a better number, but maybe this 3, as you said, maybe it's just a sucker bet to get people to bet Houston.
Yeah, this game's the more I think about it too, the tougher it is because part of me wants to back Houston for having the better quarterback play, but Bryce Young with better protection could be in better shape. The one thing I'll be watching, the Panthers have a lot of stacked injuries right up the middle of the defense, like you mentioned. Jeremy Chin went on IR, and you would think that Xavier Woods and Von Bell and some of those guys who've been banged up will be closer to 100% coming out of the bye, but if for whatever reason their safety group isn't as healthy, then I think that CJ Stroud's going to have a field day, and then I wouldn't know what to do in this case, but either way, this is where I'm at too with the side with Frank Reich. Do you really want to do that? I don't know. I don't know if I can do it, but I think that might be part of the trap here. They're trying to bait people in. So I'll probably steer away from this one unless I get stronger feelings about it as the week goes on.
Golden Goliath. Wait, no, I'll get to that in a second. Sammy asking, would you stash Charbonnet or Singletary? Definitely Charbonnet, right? Like, I really don't see the upside in Singletary. Like, maybe Dameon Pierce gets hurt. But Charbonnet I think he has more talent than Singletary. What do you think?
Yeah, that Houston backfield is going to be frustrating because I think Pierce is probably more talented, but he's played terribly this year, and Singletary can take carries from him, but he's kind of reached what he's going to be at this level. Charbonnet, at least you can sell yourself on, hey, if he ends up getting the bulk of the carries, he could end up winning me my fantasy league. So I would stack Charbonnet if you have to choose one.
Golden Goliath saying Carolina is not one of those picks where it feels right, but you need them to win outright, and it's tough to play it. So, not necessarily. It seems like 3 you needed to win outright, but the odds of something landing on 1 or 2 is 5%. And then landing on 3, which is a push, obviously, but that's about 7.5%. So you add those up, like you get the winner of the push. It's like 12%, really. So it doesn't sound like a lot, but that's it's like 1 in 8. So it's not too bad. Like it's not necessarily win outright. So those 1 and 2 point wins tend to add up, as we saw in that Cleveland Indianapolis game last week. Anyway, next game we have it's the Eagles and the Redskins. This line opened up Eagles -6. It's up to 6.5. Eagles just made a trade for Kevin Byard, which I thought was really good. And then Washington kind of embarrassed itself against the Giants. So who do you like here?
Yeah, I love the Bayern trade too. I think that's going to upgrade the Eagles and one of their biggest weak points. And they traded him for him early enough in the week that he could end up playing for them, though they might ease him into action and just be sure that he knows what he's doing before he's out there. So I'm interested to see how much he plays. But all that's to say, I weirdly feel like this might be a good spot for the Commanders. I don't love the idea of backing them against Philly, but this is the reason why I am thinking about it like this. I just think that Philadelphia had its win of the year. Everyone was saying Dolphins Eagles is potential Super Bowl preview. The sentiment on who would win was split. Some people really thought it'd be the Eagles, some thought it'd be the Dolphins, but the Eagles really did a good job and just kind of came out, punched the Dolphins in the mouth, and never really let them fully get into the game. And they held that vaunted offense to just 10 points. The greatest show on surf looked like anything but that in that spot. So I think the Eagles could be riding high on that. And I think the other part of this is that they just played Washington. And I know it was a close game. I know it went to overtime. But the Eagles are going to say to themselves, hey, yeah, we still beat them, even though we didn't have our A game that day. And we'll bring it more this week. But they still might not. They just might come out flat. Like, it's just not the same thing. They've already beaten this team. They just came off their biggest win of the year in prime time. And look, I know that the Eagles are a really, really good team, but I still think that they're going to have some issues on offense because Brian Johnson's first year as offensive coordinator has been shaky at times. I also think the Eagles could get caught looking ahead because they have the Cowboys the following week. And I get that the Commanders are a divisional rival here, and that means that the Eagles are going to try to take them seriously too. But at the same time, in the back of their minds, they know, hey, if we beat the Cowboys next week, we're going to have 3-game lead on them, can keep them at an arm's length for the rest of the year. So I think that that's going to be part of this, and where this spread is up near 7, that leads me to lean on Washington. Washington hasn't been impressive, and Sam Howell could implode in this game too. So, you always have to take that into account. He's a young quarterback. He's shown some bouts with turnovers, but I've also been impressed by him at times. So I'm interested to see how this one plans out. I don't know how much I'm going to bet on this one. I have this anywhere from 0 units to 4 units. It's going to depend on what the injury report looks like. But Washington is my pick here for now.
So I definitely agree that the Eagles are in a bad spot. I mean, coming off that win, now they play a team that they beat already, and then they play Dallas. Like you mentioned, all this. So it is a horrific spot for the Eagles. So it's very difficult to bet on them. But I think it's also difficult to bet on the Redskins. I think because I don't think people understand how bad this team is. They lost to the Giants, so maybe some people are catching on, but they're. This is the best thing ever as when people look at team records. And I always want to argue with people who are they either quote Bill Parcells, who once said, you are what your record is, which is okay, if you're playing or coaching, sure. But if you're trying to handicap games, that doesn't matter at all. But I almost want to stop because I think it's such a big advantage that people just look at team records and they kind of assume that, Redskins are 3-4, below average team. No, actually, the metrics say the Redskins are the 31st best team in the NFL. Only Arizona's worse. They are so bad in every area. They can't pass protect. Sam Howell takes so many sacks. They can't really run the ball because their offensive line sucks. I like McLaurin and Samuel. Those guys are good, but their defense, their defense is not even getting after the quarterback. They're 18th or 19th in pressure rate. They're supposed to be really good getting to the quarterback, but they don't. They've allowed the most 50-yard plus receptions in the NFL this year. They can't stop the run. This team is so bad. And considering how bad they are, I think you could make the argument that this line should be closer to 10. I made it 8.5. The EPA says it should be 9.5. So I think we're getting a low line here, as crazy as it sounds, at 6.5. So I am right now I have the Eagles penciled in. I'm not going to bet this game, like I said, just because the spot is so bad. And I could definitely get the case for Washington just because, the Eagles, if they're sleepwalking, sure, the Redskins could cover the spread. But I don't know. The fact that they almost lost to the Redskins, I think, gives me some pause. Like if they had beaten Washington pretty soundly the first time, I think they'd be like, okay, yeah, we'll do it again. But the fact that they had to go to overtime to beat this team, I think they could. That might put this team on the radar. I think so. I'm going to side with the Eagles here, like I said, but yeah, I'm not. I would not recommend betting Philadelphia.
Yeah, my whole thing is if they weren't playing the Cowboys next week, I could see them really taking Washington seriously in this spot because of what you said. But I think in the Eagles' mind, and maybe I'm trying to play too many mind games here, I think they're going to look at that overtime game and say, we really did not play our best in that game. We can beat this team in our sleep. Let's do it again. But let's just do it better. And I feel like they still might come out flat. And Washington just has a way of sticking with the Eagles in the Jalen Hurts era, which sounds weird to say because Jalen Hurts has a 4-2 record in his starts against the Eagles, I think. But when you consider his record as a starting quarterback, he only has like 6 losses, I think, over his career in the regular season. It's more than 6, but I can't remember the exact number. But all of those games, the 6 games, I believe, were by, I think 2 of the wins are by 4 or fewer points. So they've tended to play close games, except for a couple of them. And maybe this is one of those couple ones where it'll get away from Washington. Because I agree with you. I don't think they're as good as their record says they are. I think the coaching staff's kind of losing them a little bit there. But they still have some talent in individual places that I think can elevate them enough. I am curious, though, why do you think the line is at 6.5? Do you think that's because they're banking on the public looking at Washington's record and being like, oh, yeah, we're going to have them get back to there? Or what do you think the reason for that is?
Well, the advanced spread was 5.5. So, like, I mean, that was even lower. So, I do think that Washington is favored, is looked at more favorably, I think, by the public just because of those wins. Like, they had a win in Atlanta by 8 points, right? But like that was a game where they were outgained by like 200 yards in that game. It was another one of those. They won in Denver, and obviously they won week 1 too against Arizona. But like, I think that maybe the odds makers were looking at the Eagles and saying what I've been saying until the Byard trade, where like the Eagles are overrated because like metrics wise, the Eagles aren't even in the top 5. Now I think that Byard could really change that because like you said, that was like their main weakness. Like I think they still need another cornerback, but to get another safety to replace Terrell Edmonds, who's just like horrible in coverage. I think that's absolutely huge. And like, that was the Eagles' biggest weakness was the coverage. Like they were 22nd or 21st or 22nd in defensive EPA heading into week 7. Like that's not a team that should be favored by more than a touchdown on the road against anyone really, except for maybe the worst team in the NFL, like Arizona. But against like a team that's perceived to be a 500 team or maybe slightly worse, it feels like 5.5, 6.5 feels right. But now the Eagles have Byard, and now and we kind of see that Washington is definitely not a 3-4 team. They're probably a 1-6 team wearing a 3-4 mask. So I can understand the spread, including the 5.5 on the advanced number. I just think it's wrong. I think that the Eagles should be favored by way more.
Yeah, you make a good case, and we'll have to see how much Byard's going to play. If Byard's going to play a lot, I'm not going to really want to bet this game that much. I know I've said that about a lot of games so far, but that's kind of the point of the season we're at. There are a lot of games that I really like, and then there are some who be like, I don't want this at all.
Yeah. Alex saying Redskins must have buyer's remorse going from Wentz to Howell. I mean, they've had so many bad quarterbacks over the years. Like they traded for McNabb back in the day. Like they've there's that under what's it called? Steve Spurrier. They went with Danny Werfel and Shane Matthews. Like they've you can go back so long and like just look at like horrendous quarterbacks. They had Mark Brunell at the end of his career. It just like I can't even remember the last time the Redskins had a good quarterback. Is obviously back when they went to the Super Bowl in the early 90s, but ever since then it's just been a revolving door, and they just can't figure out the position. It's kind of wild how like like you have the Packers going from Brett Favre to like Aaron Rodgers, whereas like the Redskins just can't get any good quarterback play whatsoever.
Yeah, I will say one thing in defense of Sam Howell is that he really doesn't have the blocking in front of him. I get that he's holding the ball too long, too. That's his fault as well. But it's so hard for young quarterbacks with bad blocking to find success. So I've been impressed with him at times, but it's a tough evaluation. If you're Washington, you're going to have to bring in competition for him next year. But I don't think he's what's broken with the team. But he's certainly, it's not like he's been like, oh my God, this guy's otherworldly either.
Yeah, I mean, as a Northwest Eagles fan says, Cousins was at least top 15. Yeah, they've had like some okay, like Brunell, like he had a one decent year, like, but they've been had like a long term answer at quarterback. And I will defend Howell as well. Like he was a 5th round pick. Like for a 5th round pick, they got a lot out of him. You know, it's like not like they took him in the top 20 or anything like that. So. Like he says, who are the Sharps going with in Green Bay versus the Vikings? I believe it's Green Bay. Last time I looked, I'll check real quickly. It is Green Bay. Yeah, Green Bay is getting a ton of sharp money. So we'll get to that in a little bit. The next game is Rams at the Cowboys. I just mentioned Dallas as maybe a look ahead for the Eagles. Maybe Dallas is looking ahead to this game too. The sign opened up Cowboys -6.5, and it's still 6.5. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, this one was a tough one because in my head, we kind of have the Rams figured out a little bit. They're going to have trouble covering against teams that get a lot of pressure because Matthew Stafford he never was very mobile, but now in his older age with some injury issues, he's definitely not mobile. And so I was thinking DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons should get plenty of pressure in this one to kind of rattle him and kind of make his life difficult. But then I looked at the Cowboys' pressure rate numbers. They're actually like middle of the pack, which is very weird. Because you'd think with Micah Parsons, he should get pressure on every snap. But I think he had a bad game, or not a bad game, but he was quiet against the Chargers, I think is the best way to put it. He didn't really make much of an impact on that Monday Night Football game. We've seen him like leave the field with like minor injuries and come back throughout the season. So I'm wondering if he's a little bit banged up, and so he should be better coming out of the bye week, I would think. But I'm still a little worried about the pressure rate numbers here for Dallas to earn this type of cover against a Rams team that has 2 really great receivers, a good passing attack. And yeah, if Matthew Stafford's under pressure, they're not going to cover very often. But as 6.5-point underdogs with the Cowboys potentially looking ahead to a game against the Eagles, the more I think about this, the more I think this is a tough spot for Dallas to cover in full. It's somewhat similar to that Eagles game because I know that the Cowboys don't have the like ability to look past opponents like the Eagles might because they're staring back up at them. But I still feel like they're going to look at this Rams team and say, yeah, we can handle them. We can get this done. And I feel like this could end up being close. This could end up being more of a field goal game, which could become important because the Rams just cut Brett Maher today and signed a guy I had never heard of. I think his name's like Lucas Havrelsick to be their kicker. So who knows? Maybe that becomes important. But with this line being at 6.5, I think my lean is on the Rams here. If the Cowboys' pressure rate numbers were better, I'd feel better about it. Or if you were to tell me Micah Parsons was hurt and he's going to be getting pressure on every snap again soon, then I probably would feel a little better about backing the Cowboys. But I think this line's just a little bit high. What are your thoughts on this one?
So I'll give you my thoughts after I answer this question. Reed asking, what's your guys' favorite plays of the week? I have 2 this week. One is this game. I love the Rams. I think there's a good chance they win outright. Regarding the pressure rate, that's one thing. That's funny that we both came to the same conclusion because heading into my analysis, I'm like, man, like Stafford really sucks against like high pressure. In fact, like the Rams are 3-4 this year. All 4 of their losses are against teams with top 10 pressure rates. Their 3 wins are against teams that don't have top 10 pressure rates. So they kind of like been sort of easy to figure out. And I'm like, okay, Dallas is going to swarm them, right? But Dallas is 18th in pressure rate, as you said. They're like not very good in that regard. And I think it's like Mike Parsons playing like really well this year. I think DeMarcus Lawrence is the guy who's taking the step back. Like he just does not look the same to me. I think he has 2 sacks on the year, but he just hasn't really played well for the most part. So I think that like that's definitely a factor. And it's like it's that sort of thing. Like remember last year with the Browns, like they had obviously Myles Garrett, but yet they were like bottom 5 in pressure rate. Same thing with the Raiders. Like they had Max Crosby, but they're bottom 5 in pressure rate. It's only because one guy is getting to the quarterback. Like you need at least 2 guys to have like a high pressure rate. And Dallas doesn't have that at the moment with Lawrence. And like maybe that'll change. Maybe he'll round himself in the shape. I don't know why. Like he's not getting after the quarterback anymore, but he is getting older. So maybe he's just like on the downslope of his career. So I think that's definitely a factor. So a couple other reasons why I love the Rams here. I think they're underrated, and like they're getting a ton of flack for losing to the Steelers at home, but they outgained the Steelers in total yards and yards per play. So this is like another misleading loss where like the Rams could have won that game. Obviously, that pick six that was kind of weird, and then also the bad call at the end with the sneak. Like the Rams should have gotten a chance again. The Rams they're not bad. Like they're 11th in net EPA, so that means like they're an above average team. The Cowboys are only 8th, so like these teams are 3 spots apart in the metrics. So like teams 3 spots apart in the metrics should not be like a line between them should not be -6.5. Like even with Dallas coming off a bye and being at home, like I made this line 3, and the EPA says this line should be 3 as well. So this line is like really inflated just because, first of all, there's always going to be attacks on the Cowboys when they're good. And second, people think the Rams are not that good because they're 3-4, kind of, again, like misleading record. Like the Rams are definitely better than 3-4, I think. Also, as you said, like I think this is a spot where the Cowboys might not be focused. They have the Eagles coming up. It's big games for the division, really. And they're looking at the Rams just losing to the Steelers. Like, I just don't think they're going to be I don't think the Rams are on the radar. And finally, the Rams love attacking the middle of the field, with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. The Cowboys are 28th at defending the middle of the field. So big advantage for the Rams there. I think there's a good chance the Rams win outright.
Yeah, this feels like a great money line sprinkle opportunity. Like I said, I think this line is meant to trick people because the fact that both you and I had the same reaction of Dallas is going to be able to get pressure, that's going to make this tough on Stafford. But the fact that we have that written down in our heads, but have to look at the stats to kind of back that up, I think they think the public will do the same thing. Because in my head, this line was going to be 4.5 because of the Dallas tax that you mentioned. But once I saw the pressure rate numbers, I was like, oh, wait, no, this is really mispriced then. So glad we're on the same side in this one. This will probably end up being one of my bigger plays as well.
Yeah, I think it sounds like it's going to be on our card for the Super Contest. Lion King asking Sharps on Rams versus Dallas. The Sharps surprisingly have not touched this game. Obviously, it's still way early in the week that things could change, but right now they are not backing either side. It's kind of surprising to me. I thought they'd be in the Rams. But at least, go ahead.
I was going to say my guess is they might see if the public will bet this up to 7, and then they could try to hammer that number.
It's a good point. Yeah, they could be waiting on the 7 for sure. But then again, some guy on Twitter says that lines don't matter. So I don't know. Anyway, all right. We have for those who don't know, like definitely look at my tweets from Monday night. Real quick, there's some guy on Twitter who keeps telling me that spreads don't matter. You can just bet you can bet any team, and it doesn't matter what the spread is. And then I retweeted this and I said, it's just a matter of time before a sportsbook manager pings me for this guy's info. And then, like, no joke, 2 minutes later, the Circa sportsbook manager who follows me on Twitter, he reposted my tweet and said, can we have this guy's info? We would love to have him as a customer. This is so funny. So yeah, anyway, we have the next game. We have Patriots at the Dolphins. Dolphins open up -12 down to 9.5. Looks like some serious sharp money coming in on the Patriots. Once again, the Sharps love the Patriots and Broncos. They love to bet on them. And for the first time last week, it paid off. So who do you like here?
Yeah, this one, the advanced line on this game, I think, as you mentioned, was 12. So the massive move is sharp money related, obviously. But I'm looking at this as a point where both of these teams are due to bounce back in a way, I think, to what they were before last week. Maybe I'm not reacting enough to the performances of last week, but I think that the Patriots beating the Bills was more about the Bills defense being beat up than the Patriots offense coming to life. And I know people will say, well, don't the Dolphins have a bad defense? Yeah, their defense isn't good, but they're starting to get some pieces back. They took Nick Needham off the physically unable to perform list today. That may not be the most exciting name to some people, but he should add depth to their cornerback room. Xavier Howard, if he comes back, his absence was big time felt against the Eagles. And Jalen Ramsey, it sounds like he's going to be activated at some point. I don't know if it's going to be this week or the following week, but if he plays against the Patriots, all of a sudden that secondary looks a lot better, and their pass rush was getting healthier before. So I think the Dolphins could potentially end up running away with this game against the Patriots. Maybe they wouldn't take the Patriots seriously normally because they beat them earlier in the season. But that was a close game, and the Dolphins are coming off of a loss on national TV where they're kind of looking at themselves and saying, man, are we really are we going to lose to teams like the Eagles by this many points and have this kind of game unfold on us? So I think they're going to be wanting to beat up on some weaker competition. I think McDaniel will have them properly motivated. I think Belichick will have the Patriots kind of gamed up for this one, but I'm just worried about the possibility that either Mac Jones has another regression in his kind of development. He played very well against the Bills, but he could easily take a step back. And the other issue is, I know the Patriots defense limited the Dolphins offense the first time they played, and they only allowed 24 points. But the Dolphins, I believe, had a couple of either missed or blocked kicks in that game that would have swung the score. And the Patriots defense was healthier in that game too. Christian Gonzalez was still playing. Matthew Judon was still playing. So some of the absences they have on that side of the ball, I think, may rear their heads against the Dolphins if the Dolphins get healthier. So I'm going to be on the Dolphins right here, but as you know, it does not take me much convincing to get off the Dolphins, because I do think that until they get those players back on defense, they're going to continue to be overrated. So if you can convince me to bet the Patriots, maybe I'll do it.
So regarding that, even if they come back, I don't think it's necessarily true that they're going to be 100%. Like betting the players the first week off an injury, I think could be misleading, just because is Jalen Ramsey going to be 100% coming back? Is Xavier Howard going to be 100% after missing action? Nick Needham too, he's missed some time. I don't know. I think it may take one game, maybe two, for them to be 100%. Probably at least just one. And so, even if they come back against the Patriots, I don't think they're going to be 100%. And also, I think it's way more likely that the Patriots are going to play harder in this game than the Dolphins. First of all, the Patriots lost to the Dolphins earlier in the year. It's a big rivalry, and they're huge underdogs here. And you gotta love Bill Belichick in a game against his team he's lost to as a big underdog. Obviously with Tom Brady, that was almost automatic, and Mac Jones is obviously no Tom Brady, but I still trust Bill Belichick. He redeemed himself after all those losses from my bets. He redeemed himself last week. Of course, the first time I wasn't on him, but I think that it's kind of the Patriots finding the rhythm. Offensively, they're pretty impressive, and yeah, the Bills are missing a lot of players, but the Dolphins defense is pretty bad too. They're 22nd in EPA defensively, so I feel like the Patriots should be able to move the ball. Now with Miami, I think if this were a regular game, I'd definitely be on board with what you said. However, this is a really tough spot for them. I know that they're coming off a loss on national TV, but after this game, they have to fly to Germany and play the Chiefs. It's one thing to just go overseas to Germany, but they have to play the Chiefs next week. Overseas, man, that is the look ahead of all look ahead games. They already beat the Patriots. If they hadn't played the Patriots yet, you can be okay, maybe this is a divisional rivalry. They'll be more focused, but they already beat New England on national TV in week 2. I just don't think they're going to take the Patriots seriously, despite the coming off the loss. So, and also with these guys, maybe coming back, I think they may even hold them out for the Kansas City game, just because it's such a big game. If they could take down the Chiefs, that could be for the first round bye, potentially. So that is a monumental game. I just don't see the Dolphins really focus here.
All right, I'm switching to the Patriots because I didn't want to actually pick the Dolphins. I just get worried about games. This is the problem with being a fan. You get worried when your team gets good after being bad. And so I don't want to disappoint myself by getting back on the Patriots bandwagon, but I think you're right. I think the line's a little high. I hadn't thought about the Germany aspect of that game too. I had known that the Chiefs were on the schedule, but that is a Germany game, and that is going to be a huge deal. So I could see even a situation if the Dolphins are winning big that maybe there's a backdoor cover. And we know that because the Dolphins defense isn't very good, that's possible. So, all right, I wasn't high on the Dolphins being my pick. This is, I think, the third different time I have switched off the Dolphins on this live podcast. I've only ever picked them grudgingly this year. So, yeah, let's ride with the Patriots. And if we get burned again, then we just can't touch them the rest of the year.
Well, that's what we said against the Raiders. We got burned, and then we couldn't touch them, and then we should have. So I
Yep.
don't know. I feel like we just got to stick to our convictions and keep losing our money with the same team over and over again. I don't care if the Patriots never covered the spread again. I'm never. I think the biggest mistake was not betting them last week because it was so obvious. Like I wrote it multiple times. I'm like the biggest lock this week is the Patriots because I'm not betting them. Like, so I don't know. Like if they find a way to lose this game, I'm not going to kick myself. This is not going to be a big bet or anything. It's going to be like 2 units or something. So, but yeah, I mean the Patriots, the sharps are on the Patriots again. So that's something to consider at least. Next game is we have the Battle of New York, the Jets and the Giants. Actually, North Jersey. This line opened up Jets -3. It's still 3. There are a couple of -2.5, -120s out there. So potentially we could see the line drop. Maybe someone knows something about the Giants' injuries, or maybe they're just speculating. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, maybe they're wondering if Cordy Glenn or maybe Andrew Thomas comes back for the game. Feels like first year we did this podcast, every week we're like, hey, if Cordy Glenn plays, we like the Bengals, and Cordy Glenn didn't play for like 11 weeks.
I don't think he ever played, did he? Or maybe he came back at like the very end.
You know what? I don't think he played. I'm pretty sure he did not play.
He never played again.
Yep, we were waiting on him, never came back. So that's kind of where we're at with Andrew Thomas on the Giants. So maybe if he comes back at +3, you could maybe convince me on the Giants, but I have this down at -2.5 because that was the line I saw at DraftKings. I think I like the Jets there. The reason is I said earlier in the year I would never back Zach Wilson, and here I am backing Zach Wilson again. So the reason behind this is really the defense more than anything else. The Jets defense is very good, generates a lot of pressure. And we've seen Tyrod Taylor and the Giants offense the last 2 weeks play well against the Bills and against Washington, well enough to win games. The problem is they still haven't scored very much. I think they've averaged 13 points per game in those. And yeah, granted, those were against solid defenses. Like the Bills have a good defense, and Washington, well, they don't have a good defense. So I think the banged up Bills defense in Washington are not going to compare to the Jets defense in this one. So I like their chances of really slowing down this offense. And if Daniel Jones returns to play in this one, which I have no idea what the plan is with him, I think he's going to be week to week to week kind of thing at this point. I'm going to like the Jets a little bit more because Jones is just so injury prone. Taylor is not as interception prone. My goodness. I'm sorry. I am having trouble with words right now. But yeah, I think that the turnovers are an issue with Jones. They're less of an issue with Taylor. The Jets defense, as we've seen, can make teams pay with the turnovers. That's how they beat the Eagles despite being vastly outgained by them. So I'm backing the Jets in this spot for that reason. Now, if Andrew Thomas comes back and Tyrod Taylor is playing at quarterback, I may not bet this game because I would think that the Giants would have a better chance of keeping it close and perhaps winning. And the possibility would still exist that Zach Wilson could revert to just being completely unplayable and throwing a lot of interceptions. So, that concerns me where the Jets are the road favorite in this game. They obviously play in the same stadium. So this is not a home or road game for either team. So the Giants are getting the short end of the stick on that this year. But anyway, if this line is under 3, I'm going to side with the Jets. But if this line gets to 3 and the Giants are looking healthier, I could end up flipping sides on that one. But if Andrew Thomas is this year's Cordy Glenn, then I think we're going to have to fade the Giants again at some point.
Well, I mean, at the very least, like Andrew Thomas is definitely better than Cordy Glenn. Like Cordy Glenn was like a solid offensive lineman back then, but like Andrew Thomas is one of the top left tackles in the NFL, and he's also young, so I imagine he'll play again at some point. Although like before he like leaves the NFL to go like just to do something else with his life. Anyway, I like the Jets at the moment. If the Giants get Andrew Cordy Glenn Thomas back from injury, that's going to change a lot for me because the Jets are the number one. They have the number 1 pressure rate in the NFL. So like having that like is like so difficult here. Like if you're missing your left tackle against that, like it's going to be problematic. And for me, like it's actually the opposite for me with quarterbacks. Like I actually, if Daniel Jones is back, I have more confidence in the Giants, just because like he could do more, like he can escape using his legs. I know Tyrod Taylor can run too, but like I feel like that Daniel Jones has at least some more upside, whereas like Tyrod Taylor is just more like dink and dunk, and like he's a backup quarterback who's won against a defense ravaged by injury and a horrible defense. So like now he gets a top 10 defense, and I think that's going to be too tough for a backup quarterback to deal with. Whereas like if Daniel Jones is there and he has Andrew Thomas blocking for him, suddenly I think the Giants, you can argue, are underrated, and I think that like they should be able to do enough against Zach Wilson. Speaking of Zach Wilson, though, there is definitely the reason to be like bullish on him in this game, which is like sounds weird. But like the Giants blitz at one of the highest rates in the NFL, which is like every time I break down a Giants game, I'm like, okay, how does the opposing quarterback handle the blitz? So like last week, Sam Howell was he's horrific handling the blitz, and we saw that in real action. Like the Redskins didn't score a single point except for that coming off that muff punt near the end. But surprisingly, Zach Wilson's like really good against the blitz. His completion percentage is 3% higher. His YPA is 2.5 yards higher, which is like unheard of. Like usually the YPA drops because like they don't have time to throw. But like his YPA like skyrockets. His turnover worthy play is about the same. So for some reason, Zach Wilson handles the blitz pretty well, which is like shocking. So that gives me more confidence in the Jets as well. So I feel like I'm going to be on the Jets unless like the Giants are suddenly like completely healthy. And in that case, I may like I don't think I'm going to bet them, but like if the Giants are missing Daniel Jones or Andrew Thomas, and like then suddenly the Jets look appealing from a betting perspective. I'll probably have them for a couple units.
Yeah, I think my reasoning for liking Tyrod Taylor better than Daniel Jones probably doesn't apply as much in this game, because Taylor will still probably turn the ball over less than Jones, but he's also not going to push the envelope. So that's going to be very difficult against this type of defense. So I think your point there is well taken, but it sounds like we have pretty much the same opinion of this game. It's kind of Jets, or if the Giants are somehow fully healthy, yeah, maybe we would switch to them, but I'm not going to bet the Giants in this one. I think it's just too tough a matchup.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Jets coach against the spread off a bye. Robert Saleh is 0-2 against the spread off a bye. Obviously, small sample size, so nothing to read into there. And we have a trade alert. Lions and Skins are reportedly working on a massive deal. Do you have any info on this? And if like, what do you think this could involve? Like, I don't even know if it's true, but I'm just taking his word for it. Really, you could have just said anything. I'm like, okay, like what's going on here?
I have not heard anything about this, so I think Lion King maybe knows something, or maybe is just having some wishful thinking here. But if that were the case, I think you'd be probably looking at Chase Young, right? That would be the guy that Washington would be most likely to trade, because they have two defensive end free agents after this year, Montez Sweat and Chase Young. And you can make the case for keeping either of them, but I think if you're going to trade one of them for assets, the easier one to trade will be Chase Young, because he's slightly younger, he has a little more upside, and he has also been less healthy. So if you're looking to avoid giving one a deal, it would probably be Young in that case. But I like both of the players, so if Washington trades either of them, whichever team gets that pass rusher will be getting a good guy.
Yeah, I think that makes the most sense to me. I don't know the Lions salary cap situation. I know it was like really good beforehand. Maybe it's Jonathan Allen after he was critical of the team. And like the Lions could use the defensive lineman, but like again, not really sure that's anything. It could be wishful thinking. It could just be messing with us. So if anyone like posts a comment like that, I'd be like, okay, oh Jacob, what's going on here? Anyway, we have the next game here: Falcons and Titans. Titans open up as 1 point favorites. Now the Falcons are favored by 2.5. I think this is because of the quarterbacking news. Ryan Tannehill may not play. There's a chance he could, but he hurt his ankle in that London game, and I think it was Mike Vrabel who said that if Tannehill stays out, the quarterbacks are going to be Will Levis and Malik Willis. So good luck trying to figure that out. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I like the Falcons here. Probably quite a bit at this spread. I think you've brought this up multiple times on this podcast already, but The Buccaneers game last week, like the Falcons barely escaped with the win and the cover in that one. So misleading. They committed so many bad turnovers. Desmond Ridder had 3 fumbles and somehow lost all of them. The most egregious one was the one where he was strolling into the end zone, had the ball in his right hand, did not secure it, got it punched out, and had it go out of bounds through the end zone. Because if he had just gotten into the end zone, the game was effectively over because there was about 5.5 minutes left, and the Buccaneers were going to have a lot of trouble mounting 2 scoring drives to send it to overtime or to win the game. I could not fathom how he screwed that one up. And that was very frustrating, as was being a very heavily invested Bijan Robinson owner who had Deontay Foreman on the bench and watched Bijan Robinson get all of 1 carry because he had some sort of migraine or headache or something, which I don't grudge. Like, if you don't feel well, don't play. But if you're Arthur Smith, can you please tell us you knew he didn't feel well on Saturday? So I have a lot of reasons to be mad at the Falcons for last week because they made my life a living hell at times. But they're clearly the better team here. Their world's better than the Titans, really. The Titans are embracing the tank. They just traded their best defensive back. Who knows who else might be out the door by the time trade deadline passes? They could even try to see if they could trade Derrick Henry. If they go to Henry and say, hey, do you want to keep playing here? I would assume if he said yes, they'd keep him. But if he said no, can you try to trade me to a contender? It wouldn't surprise me if they did that either. And if that happens, they're going to be really brutal to watch on offense, even though Ty J. Spears just looked good. But anyway, the greater point here is that the Falcons generate a lot of pressure, have a good defense that can limit Derrick Henry in that running game. I think they have the 8th best run defense in terms of yards allowed per game. So I think that the only advantage I see the Titans having in this game is the coaching element, because I trust Mike Vrabel more than Arthur Smith. Even still, Arthur Smith is probably going to be motivated in this one because Vrabel's his old boss. And Vrabel might know, like, the writing's kind of on the wall that this is not going to be a winning season. So, I mean, he's going to try to tough through things with Malik Willis and Will Levis. But we know Malik Willis holds on to the ball too long, gets a team that generates pressure. That could be a recipe for disaster. So, with this staying under 3, I really like the Falcons. I got 1 to 3 units on this right now. I want to know more about who's going to be playing quarterback for the Titans. We may not know anything about that because of what Vrabel's doing, but I still think the Falcons are the right side here.
Yeah, it's so hard to bet the Falcons as favorites just because they kick so many field goals. And like it was I think Golden Goliath was saying that, like, okay, they're favored by less than 3. All they need to do is win. But like that's less so with Atlanta more than any other team, just because it feels like they have so many of these ugly scores, like 16, 13, 19. Like they had, like, this game could be easily be like 19-17 and like they win but don't cover. And so like if you bet Atlanta, I almost want to say you want to take the money line almost, just because, man, I just like I don't really trust the team to cover as a favorite unless it's like only by 1. Remember that Green Bay game too, like where they were favored by 1, like early in the week, but then they ended up being favored by 2.5 and they won but didn't cover. It just feels like that happens so many times. Then Houston too. So that's one thing I have, one concern I have, and the second concern I have deals with the coaching edge, as you said. Mike Vrabel, obviously the better coach, but not only is he the better coach, he's the better coach coming off a bye. He's 5-0 against the spread off a bye. Like, we talk about how great he is as an underdog. Like, he's undefeated after a bye. Like, and it makes sense. Like, you have a great coach having extra time to prepare. Like, they're going to have a great game plan. Now the kind of like the fly in the ointment is the backup quarterback thing. And so if it's either Malik Willis or Will Levis, like I have concern there. I have more confidence in Will Levis only because we haven't seen him yet. Like, we've seen Malik Willis, and I just don't think he can beat Atlanta. Atlanta, by the way, top 12 defense, so it's going to be tough for a backup quarterback to deal with that. But like Will Levis, we haven't seen him yet. Like, maybe he could be good. Like, who knows? I didn't like him coming out of Kentucky. I thought he was overrated. I never really understood the first round hype with him. And so like I wasn't shocked that he fell to the second round, but like, crazier things have happened. Like we've seen Sam Howell emerge as a starter as a 5th round pick. Maybe Will Levis could be a good quarterback. So like that unknown is also another question mark I have here. So like all these like slight concerns is like why I may not bet Atlanta. If I do, it's going to be for a small wager. But like, again, like I'd rather just take the money line. I don't know what the money line is, but I think I'd rather bet that than the -2.5.
Yeah, I think going money line in this game would be a sensible move to kind of mitigate that risk. And I I've backed Atlanta pretty heavily. Like I've been invested in their kicking game in a lot of fantasy leagues too, and somehow that has even been frustrating because Young Ku early in the season either wasn't getting opportunities or was missing field goals, and it was like the one thing the team's supposed to be doing very well at like a very high level they weren't even doing. So I totally get that. And Vrabel's post buy record scares me a little bit, but I just uh, usually I'm pretty gung ho to back Vrabel in these spots, but I just think that the talent bridge is too much to overcome. And the one other thing is, I know Byard is leaving the team on great terms, but he was a big time leader in that locker room, I believe, or for that franchise for 7 years. So I'm wondering if his departure might be a little deflating, even though everyone kind of knows, like, I wonder if the Titans are going to look at this and be like, oh, we're really not competitive anymore and we don't have our players. And like I said earlier, some people on that team might be thinking about the trade deadline. So I think with all that mix and with the backup quarterback likely to play top defense, that's going to make me bet the Falcons. But you give good reasons for pause. I will give you that.
Well, that's what I'm here for. All right, let's get to the last game of the early slate. Big early slate, by the way. Vikings at the Packers. This line opened up Packers -1.5. It's down to pick them. Obviously, because of what we saw Monday night, everyone suddenly wants to bet Minnesota. I think there's a ton of public action on Minnesota right now, and as I said earlier in the video, lots of sharp money on the Packers. So this is a classic public versus sharp game here. Who do you like?
Yeah, so I'm going to be on the Packers here with the Sharps. And I feel bad about this because I wanted to be on the Vikings. The Vikings did against the 49ers what I was expecting them to do in the second half of this season. And I'm excited to back them for that reason. Brian Flores' defense has started to play very, very well. Or at least he's getting the most out of the players. Like Cameron Bynum is looking pretty good. All of a sudden, grabbing 2 interceptions, and they're starting to get more pressure. And their offensive line looked good. Dalton Reisner played pretty well in place of Ezra Cleveland. So I think that the Vikings have reason for upside, but this spot concerns me. The Packers have not looked good in recent weeks either, but this is a rivalry game. You're at Lambeau Field. The Vikings are coming off of a short week and a very high for this team. And I know that you can make the case like, oh, they have to win this game to stay in the playoff race. But I think that they're going to be maybe a little bit flat in this one against the Packers, who are going to be more motivated because they've lost 3 games in a row and they've looked really terrible. And Jordan Love hasn't looked good during that stretch. So there's a lot of reasons that you're not going to want to back the Packers here, but they're still at home at Lambeau Field. Aaron Jones should be getting healthier and should be getting more involved in the offense, and that should theoretically help Love to play a little bit better. The concern with them is their blocking. So I mean, I always have trouble backing teams with subpar offensive lines, but I'm going to do that in this case because I think that the Packers can pull off the victory here. And I think this is just a bad spot for the Vikings from a motivational standpoint, just energy-wise. So I'm going to be on the Packers here. I will be backing the Vikings probably more in the future, but I will be looking for spots to do it in because I think that they're going to make a potential playoff run. I just think they have to hit one more pothole before they get into a big rhythm.
So you talked about the bad spot there, like energy wise. The Sports 78 says great spot for the Packers. Is that the case? I looked it up actually, earlier in the day, just because I was kind of curious. Like underdogs of 6 or more coming off an upset on Monday Night Football, like how have they done? Now it's not a big sample size; it's 39 games, and like it's not a big percentage either. But the underdogs coming off underdogs of 6 or more coming off Monday night wins. They are 16-23 against the spread, so not very good. Not like something crazy that you automatically fade either. It just goes to show that these teams coming off big upset wins don't automatically carry things over into the following week. And in fact, it's more likely that they'll have a setback of some sort with the short rest here. And I think that that'll definitely benefit the Packers. I think with the Vikings being exhausted coming off a big win against the Niners, and like the Packers have looked so bad lately, it's like so easy to fade them. I definitely understand why the Vikings are getting all this public support. But the Packers, like their losses have been on the road. I know they lost to the Raiders and Broncos, kind of like embarrassing to lose to both of them. But like both games are close. Like Jordan Love had a chance to win both games at the very end. Couldn't get it done, but now he's going to be at home, where the Packers historically have had a big advantage, and the Vikings, playing outdoors is usually like a big factor for them. Also, I think it's interesting here. I mentioned that that Zach Wilson was like a surprise quarterback who has had a lot of success against the blitz. And I did not expect this either. So the Vikings blitz at the highest rate in the NFL. It's like not even close. Like I think the Giants are in the top 5 and they blitz like 30 something percent of the time. The Vikings blitz 57% of the time. Like insane numbers. Just so they can't really get to the quarterback otherwise. Jordan Love actually not bad against the blitz at all. Like he is like in normal situations, he's 7 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. When he's blitzed, he's throwing 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. His big time throw percentage rises from 2.1 to 6.6. His turnover worthy play percentage drops. He becomes, for some reason, a better quarterback when he's blitzed, and the Vikings tend to do that a lot. So I think that's a nice advantage for the Packers. Also, this line movement, I think, is pretty good. The Packers were favored on the advanced spread, and now it's a pick 'em. So we're getting a little bit of advantage here. Now, the guy on Twitter wouldn't care, but still, like it's still percentage. It's percentage wise for the Packers here, and I think that it is ugly. But like considering how heavy the sharps are on the Packers, I think they're onto something here. And I like the Packers even before I saw that. And then I saw the sharps are like way like all over the Packers. I was like, okay, yeah, it just makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I'm gonna be on Green Bay.
Yeah, I will be too. And I think what this sets up for and what I'm hoping for is if we do back Green Bay heavily this week and they deliver, then we'll be able to back the Vikings against the Falcons next week. Because I think if the Falcons beat the Titans or whatever happens in that game, we'll see. But if the Vikings are any sort of underdog against the Falcons, I think they have the type of offense and the type of defense that can kind of win that game, and I think that would be a better spot to back Minnesota in than this one. But I don't know that the Packers are going to be too tight in this spot. I mean, they're already 2-4. People already think they're bad. People think the season's over. That was kind of a similar spot to what the Vikings were in on Monday night against the 49ers. It was like, oh, they can just if the 49ers beat them, people weren't gonna kind of freak out about it.
Yeah, I don't see them being tight either. I think, now that they're pick 'em, I mean, it's basically like being an underdog, given that they're home. Like, I feel like most people think the Vikings are going to win this game, at least the public does. So, I think if any team's tight, I think it might be Minnesota. The Sports 78 saying Packers sneaky survivor pick this week. I don't know if this were last week, sure. Like where there weren't many options. I think there's so many good options this week. I wouldn't touch the Packers as a survivor pick.
Yeah, generally avoid pick 'em games in Survivor.
That's unless
the
it's
true
like
50-50 games, right?
Yeah, unless it's like week 17 and you don't really have any other options left. But like, yeah, I don't. There are so many good choices this week. We'll run through them later in the show at the very end. Yeah. It says tight for what they have no pressure 2-4. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I feel like they had nothing to lose at this point, coming off those 2 losses. So we get to the late games. Please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video. Really would appreciate all that, or at least one of those things. The Browns at the Seahawks. This line opened up Seahawks -2. It's up to 3. I actually locked this game in already, and for a specific reason. Who do you like in this game?
I want to know why you locked it in. Is it because of the quarterback situation in Cleveland? Can I ask that?
Yes.
Okay. So that leads me to believe that you think this line is going to go and get higher, right?
Yeah, because like right now, I think this is a Deshaun Watson line. And if Watson's ruled out and Phillip Walker starts, then this line will go to 5.5. So I want to get the 3 just for that reason.
So I wanted to double check with that because that is what I had written in the notes. I said, if Deshaun Watson plays, this line will probably be about right. But if he doesn't play, then it's going to go up for PJ Walker because I was like, there's no way that PJ Walker's going into Seattle as just a 3-point underdog here. So I like the Seahawks at this number if Deshaun Watson plays because you have the injured quarterback playing a team that's played pretty well this year. And Seattle has kind of continued to grow as the year goes along. I've been impressed with Devon Witherspoon at the cornerback position. He's really come along, and I know a lot of their pressure rate stats, they're skewed a little bit by that 11 sack game against the Giants, because without that, they have 12 sacks on the season, so they're more middle of the pack, but they've been generating consistent pressure against teams. So I think that might be harder to do against the Browns, because the Browns have a good offensive line. But if they end up having to play PJ Walker and you are able to lock this line in early, I think that you're getting great value there. So I think the Seahawks are probably the team to back here. The Browns defense will be better than they were last week. They were just inconsistent. Myles Garrett had a huge game, but the rest of them seemed like they were in a weird spot, all just coming off that win over the 49ers. But I think once again, they're in a weird kind of spot, because they're coming off of, oh, that game was such a grinded out, tough it out win where they gave up a lot of big plays. It was really back and forth, and they pulled out maybe not an emotional victory, but they pulled off another win. They're feeling good about themselves at 4-2. Now they got to hit the road to travel to Seattle with questions at the quarterback position and a tough environment. So normally I'd like the Browns as underdogs, but I think that this is going to be a little bit hard, where if the line stays under 3, I'm going to want to back Seattle. And, if it gets up around 5.5, I might consider Cleveland at that point, just because I think they have the defense needed to rattle Geno Smith a little bit. But I think the best move is to lock this one early and try to get the Seahawks. If they're stuck at -3 right now, if you can't get a -2.5, I'd still say you can bet the -3, because you can still get the line with PJ Walker. And what I would do in that scenario too, you could also do this. If you were to tease this line down to Seahawks +3 and PJ Walker was confirmed as the starter, then you can tease the Browns line on the other end after the line move. And if you tease it with something that looks good, that might end up middling, which sounds like a weird strategy, but it can pay off sometimes.
Chris saying Seattle is terrible and Cleveland has the number 1 defense. That is no longer the case. Seattle has the number 1 defense. Seattle has taken over Cleveland as the top defense metrics wise. So yeah, like this is a weird dynamic. I had to change this like completely in my power rankings, where I had like, last year we made some good money fading Seattle because we knew Seattle was a fraud. This year is completely different, because last year their defense was just terrible. Like they couldn't stop the run, they couldn't get to the quarterback. Like they had issues covering when some cornerbacks went down with injuries. Like this team was just not good last year. They had their offense going for them, sure. That's why they made the playoffs. But overall, this was not a good team last year. They did not deserve to make the playoffs over the Lions, even though they beat them. But the Lions were so banged up in that game. This year, Seattle is definitely legit. Like their defense is awesome. All the additions they made have panned out. Devon Witherspoon looks like defensive rookie of the year. He just looks phenomenal, like doing everything. Bobby Wagner in the middle of the defense, they really missed him. Getting him back, I know he's not like the same player he once was, but he's still having like a really good year. Like a lot of other additions this team has made them so much better. They're number 1 against the run. They get after the quarterback. They're top 5 against the pass. Like this team is so good defensively, and then offensively, they're coached by Greg Olson. So like, how could they be bad offensively? Like when they have one of the best offensive minded guys in the NFL coaching up Geno Smith, and like no surprise, like Greg Olson's getting like the most out of like some of his young receivers. Like Jackson Smith and Jigba came on last week. This guy Jake Bobo, coming out of nowhere to like be a good receiver. Like they suddenly had like 4 good receivers. Their offensive line's playing well. They have a great running game. Like this team has it all, I think. And they're coached really well with Pete Carroll and Olson. So I think that this line is mispriced. I think the Seahawks are a lot better than the Browns. The Browns, by the way, they have a great defense for sure, but their offense is so bad. Their offense ranks 31st. Like Deshaun Watson looked broken last week before he even left the game. He was like 1 of 5 for 5 yards in an interception, and he should have thrown a second interception. The ball just hit the ground, and then he left the game, and he wasn't. I don't know why he wasn't reinserted back into the game. Like Kevin Stefanski said, he did it as a precaution, because like he didn't want his quarterback to get hurt, and like why did he play in the first place? I just like nothing the Browns are doing really makes sense. I don't think they're well coached at all. I think Stefanski kind of sucks as coaching wise. And Jerome Ford's injured, so like they have Kareem Hunt here running against a great run defense. So like this is I think I want to see who said it. I think is the Sports 78 said this line reminds me of Detroit Baltimore. Browns would be a public dog. It reminds me of this game, but like not so much because of the line, even though the line's kind of like the same right now. This game reminds me of that because you have this road team here that's going to be one dimensional against a great defense, and like that's what got Detroit in trouble last week. And I think it's going to be the same thing with the Browns, where they're not going to be able to run the ball against a great run defense, so they're going to have to pass. And they're either going to have an injured quarterback or a backup quarterback against the top defense in the NFL. So I think Seattle makes a lot of sense here. Like I said, I already locked this in. If Walker starts, this line is just going to rise. And, I definitely think Seattle's the right side.
Yeah, and I know I said maybe if Walker played, I'd consider the Browns, but I don't think I even would, because Walker has been turnover prone at the quarterback position, and I just think that secondary is starting to look a little like the Legion of Boom a little bit. Maybe not entirely the same type of players there, but Tariq Woolen, Devon Witherspoon, Trey Brown is like their fourth cornerback with how they're playing, and he is like, when he's been on the field during his career, he's pretty good. Like I remember watching him play, and I was like, man, this guy, he looks like he could be a legit starter. So they just have so much depth in that secondary. And as you brought up, Bobby Wagner, I think Draymond Jones has been massive, though, because he's helped stop the run and marry that like back end defense to the front end defense. So yeah, I think we're going to be back in Seattle now. They were probably among the first third of our season, probably one of our biggest misses more consistently, thinking that they were overrated, because they had the young talent on defense. It was just about bringing it along, and boy, have they done a good job doing that.
Yeah, we lost two big games against them, the Arizona game and Carolina game. But it hasn't been too bad, at least. Like, we haven't lost too much money. It's just a couple of times. So, better late than never to learn from your mistakes. So glad we're on the same page there. Next game is Chiefs at the Broncos. This line open up Chiefs minus 8.5. It's actually down to 8 now. These teams played 2 weeks ago. Not sure why the NFL does this. They do this sometimes where teams will play 2 games apart or 2 weeks apart, and I hate it every time. I just don't get it. But anyway, who do you like this game?
It always sets up a weird dynamic, especially when it's late in the season. I feel like the Saints always end up doing this against like the Panthers or one of their divisional opponents, and I'm always like, why are they only playing the Panthers for the first time in week 15?
I know the Eagles and Giants are going to be like that late in the year. I think they play 16 and 8, week 16 and 18.
Yeah, it just takes the steam out of some of those rivalry games in the division when they're so just try to put them at least a little bit further apart, because this feels like the same game as last time, basically.
Yep.
The Chiefs could very easily run away with this, and they should have run away with the last game against the Broncos, but they didn't take it seriously, it seemed like. So they covered the 10.5. They pushed the 11, which is, I had the 11, so I was a little annoyed by that because Denver got a 2-point conversion to make that happen. But anyway, obviously, everyone watching this that has watched the Chiefs and the Broncos this year knows the Chiefs are the better team. They have a great defense, and their offense is rounding into form. So normally I would back the Chiefs in this spot and say, this line is a little high, like higher than you might want it to be, but there's a good reason. But I'm going to be on the Broncos here for a few reasons. One, as you mentioned, this is the second time in like 2 weeks that these teams are playing each other. The Chiefs basically beat the Broncos while not trying last time. I think Andy Reid is going to know that he can get away with doing that again. So I think his energy is going to be focused on the team's game after this. And that's the second big part of this. As you mentioned earlier, the Chiefs are playing the Dolphins in week 9, and that game is in Germany. So the Chiefs are preparing for like this big time road trip, and they have to travel they have to go on the road to a tough environment to play a divisional rival who they've already beat, who isn't good this year, who doesn't have a good defensive reputation that the Chiefs could pretty easily beat. So I just don't see them being motivated for this one. Meanwhile, I think the Broncos could treat this one like their Super Bowl. They're coming off of that win over the Packers, and I think that Sean Payton might view this as like hey, this is a moment we could build some momentum if we can give the Chiefs a run for their money here. And Russell Wilson has weirdly played well against the Chiefs, except for the last game they played 2 weeks ago during his time with the Broncos. So I think that if the Chiefs aren't focused in this game on defense, Wilson could actually have a solid game. And weirdly, Denver's defense did limit the Chiefs' offense last time they fought. So look, 8-point spread with all of these factors going in with the Chiefs. I'm going to probably back the Broncos. I don't know how much I'm going to be able to convince myself to bet on Sean Payton, but this is another one where I have the 0 to 4 units penciled in because I think this is such a terrible spot for the Chiefs. But at the same time, I know they're such a better team than the Broncos. So it's kind of, you got to convince your brain, like, don't just back the good team because they're good. This is, if they're going to lay an egg, this is probably the spot.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I feel like if the Chiefs were not the best team in the NFL, I think that you'd definitely be right, like to back the Broncos. But man, I just don't want to get in front of that freight train. Like, this team is so good. Like, they didn't try against Denver and they still won by 11 last time. Like, okay, maybe they don't try again. Maybe they win by 7. I could definitely see that happening. So I have zero interest in betting this game. But I'm going to be on the Chiefs. I just don't want to fade them here. Like, unless if this line were like obscenely high, I think I would. But 8 doesn't seem like that ridiculous. Especially considering that this line was 10.5 or 11 2 weeks ago. Feels like this is kind of like where it should be. Compared to last time at least, but like I think that line was mispriced because if the Chiefs tried hard, they could have won by 20 plus. They're just so much better than the Broncos. And like you mentioned that like Russell Wilson has generally played better against the Chiefs, but he didn't last time, and he didn't even reach 100 passing yards last time. It's because like the Chiefs have an elite defense now. They're top 6 in defense. They're just so good on that side of the ball now, and I think that's kind of like distorts and everything that we've seen in the past, where like every time the Chiefs are favored by a big number, all I hear on these podcasts I listen to while I'm like walking the dogs or driving or whatever is like, oh, the Chiefs can't cover as big favorites. Well, like that used to be the case, but not anymore. Like they have an elite defense now to match their elite offense. So again, like I don't want to get in front of that. The problem here, obviously, is what you said. Like they have to go to Germany to play the Dolphins. Like there's definitely a major look ahead potential. But even still, like even if they're looking ahead, like and don't try, we saw them not try last time and win by 11. So they could just do that again. So I just think they're just so much better than Denver. I just want to back them, but I'm not going to bet this game.
Yeah, I have enough fear in backing the Broncos that I'm probably not going to bet heavily. The only way I would do it is if the Chiefs were spending the entire week basically being like, oh yeah, we got the Germany thing coming up, and like that was all they were talking about or focusing on, because then I could see the Broncos maybe catching them napping. But you're right. And the funny thing is too, last week we were talking about like, oh yeah, at 5.5, we like the Chiefs over the Chargers, and we were getting a lot of people being like, oh, there's something off about the Chiefs, or they just haven't been all there. And we were kind of like, what more do you want? They've won 5 games in a row, and they lost the Lions week 1, but they almost won that game, and Lions are good. And I think it's just the offense isn't as explosive as people are used to seeing. But Patrick Mahomes is starting to connect more with Rashee Rice, and Travis Kelce is playing at a high level, and now all of a sudden those offensive problems, shall we call them, seem to be going out the window.
Yeah, it was definitely a sign that the Chiefs were the right side last week, huh? Like, I really don't get the narratives with them. We have a comment here: Andy can have fun trying out more misdirection, double, lateral, reverse plays against the Broncos, but like they may work this time because they have Mecole Hardman. Like I was kind of like joking that like the Chiefs got Mecole Hardman back just so they can run those plays. So like Andy was like, my fun plays aren't working. I need my guy back to do them. So the fact that like Mecole Hardman's on the team may be a factor in this game for that reason. Anyway, let's get to a more exciting game. We have Bengals at the 49ers. This line opened up 49ers -6. It's down to 5.5 after what happened Monday night. Bengals coming off a bye. What do you think about this game?
Yeah, so I want to first address the major mistake I made with the 49ers, which I may have already mentioned, but Trent Williams being out is massive for this 49ers team because the rest of their offensive line is fine, but they're not great. And Trent Williams is arguably the best offensive lineman in football, or he definitely has been the last 5 years in totality. He just makes such a difference blocking for them and makes Brock Purdy more comfortable. So if he's out from this game, I'm going to like the Bengals here as underdogs. I hate that we're losing the 6 here, but my lean is on the Bengals here, just because I think that the Bengals are going to be getting healthier coming out of their bye, and that leads me to want to back them. And the 49ers are doing one of those things where they're coming off a loss on Monday Night Football. They have a short week to prepare. The Bengals have had extra time to prepare. The Bengals were kind of starting to heat up going into the bye week as Joe Burrow got healthier and healthier. So I think he's the type of quarterback that can challenge this defense. And the one weaker area of the 49ers, and I think we saw this show up during the game against the Vikings, their secondary. They have good players back there, but they don't really have a true number 2 cornerback across from Charvarius Ward that's established himself this year. Isaiah Oliver and Diamador Lenore have played well at times, but I think that they're missing a certain element there. So it's going to be hard for them to cover Jamar Chase and Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins, who should be healthier after the week off too. So I just think the Bengals have the type of team that can keep this close. I am worried about their offensive line against what is a usually very good 49ers pass rush, but they struggled to get home against the Vikings. So I'm wondering if with the extra time to get healthy and the extra time to gel, that the Bengals offensive line might have some sort of plan in place to slow them down. So I think the Bengals have a chance of covering this one. I think it'll be close. If you were to tell me that Trent Williams and Deebo Samuel are playing in this game, then I might look at the 49ers and I might look at that line value that we're getting with them and say, oh, maybe I'll flip-flop to that side. But I think I'm going to back the Bengals here because I think that the 49ers might play it safe with Williams because they have a bye week coming up after this. And I know that the 49ers are going to be desperate to win, but the Bengals don't have to win this to cover. They just have to make it a field goal game, and they have the type of offense that leads me to believe they can do that.
Yeah, I think so too. Especially, given that the Bengals are going to have a week off, I think that's huge for Joe Burrow, who was looking healthier even before the bye, and like now he's a week off, and like having the week off could mean that they can get their offensive line in gear. It's like they have good blockers that just like for some reason they just aren't playing well at the moment, or they weren't playing well earlier in the year. And I think that could definitely change. Maybe they could make some adjustments during the bye week. It could really work wonders for them. And like they just have so much more rest than the Niners. Like you just said that they're coming off that Monday night game. Like not only that, but like they had a game on the East Coast against the Browns, and then they had a game in the Central Time Zone on Monday night, and then like on short rest they're going back to the West Coast, play this game. Like I feel like they're just going to be so fatigued here. So I also wanted to find out, as I mentioned in that Packers Vikings game, where like the Vikings were coming off like wins as an outright win as an underdog, like a big underdog on Monday Night Football. How the teams do that were favored on Monday Night Football by 6 or more that lost. And again, this is not like a big sample size. It's not even like a great percentage. But the favorites of 6 or more coming off losses on Monday Night Football are just 18 and 23 against the spread the following week, which is, it's like, it just goes to show that like these teams don't necessarily bounce back. Like it's like, if this was like 60% or 65% cover rate, you'd be like, okay, most teams tend to bounce back off those big losses as big favorites. But that's not necessarily the case. And I think that's because teams just don't have the appropriate time to make the adjustments. Like it's one fewer day plus the travel. I just think it's gonna be too hard for the 49ers to bounce back. Also, Joe Burrow is 17-6 against the spread as an underdog, so definitely like getting that. I want to show you guys, for those watching YouTube, you're going to see it. For those listening on iTunes, I'll list the margin of losses that Joe Burrow has had in his career. 3-3-3, 25-19, 3-5, 3-3-3, 2, 19-3, 21-3, 24. 3 of those losses, those big losses, by the way, were to the Browns, who have had the Bengals number. Otherwise, Joe Burrow has kept almost all of his games close that he's lost. So I suspect this is going to be similar. Like I'd kind of be surprised if the 49ers blow out the Bengals, considering that like Deebo Samuel, we know is going to be out, and Trent Williams probably won't play. And even if he does play, he may not be 100%. And then like Christian McCaffrey, who knows, like I think he only had like 15 carries on Monday Night Football. Like he may not even be on his full workload, even on a short work week. So the Niners are just so banged up. I think that they shouldn't be favored by 5.5. I think this line should be about 3. So I think we're getting good value at the Bengals. We're getting Burrow's an underdog on more rest. So yeah, I'm definitely going to be in Cincinnati.
Yeah, they just seem like the right side in this matchup. I think this is a classic scenario or classic case of the 49ers kind of coming back down to earth because of some of these injuries and just having played some tough competition. And we're going to see them come out of the bye week healthier and then kind of turn into the buzzsaw that we got accustomed to early in the season. But this is kind of it just shown that all those top tier teams in the league kind of have those have some flaw this year, and it's up to the opponents to expose them.
Yeah, Matthias is saying Christian Darrisaw won 39 of 40 pass blocking reps against Bosa, which is pretty crazy. Since he doesn't have Darrisaw, well, they do have Orlando Brown, so like they at least have a talented tackle to hold off Bosa. And Mike asking, can the 49ers possibly lose 3 straight? I don't see why not. Like I remember off the top of my head, the Raiders in 02 when they went to the Super Bowl, they lost 4 straight. And then they bounce back. So, teams go into a funk. So yeah, I mean, they could definitely lose this game and then bounce back off the bye. Carter asking what the line need to be if Williams comes back. Then again, like Williams may not be 100% coming off his first game back too. So like, is he 100%? Like that's the key here. So if Williams plays, this line may move back to 6. It's not going to be a big adjustment because like the public doesn't really care unless it's like a quarterback.
Yeah, the thing I'd be most worried about is if Williams played and this line stayed parked at 5.5. That would be what gives me pause. But if Williams plays and this goes up to 6, then I would feel okay about it because you'd be getting the key number of 6.
Yeah, that's for sure. I think I'd rather have that, like knowing that Williams may not be 100%, but still. All right, last of the late afternoon games, we have the Ravens at the Cardinals. This line open up Ravens -7.5 is up to 8.5. So who do you like here?
Yeah, so I wrote in my notes. Let's see exactly what I wrote. I am done backing the Cardinals. Then I proceeded to try to convince myself to back the Cardinals. But I can't do it right now. Look, they're a scrappy team. They play hard, but they just don't have the talent to get it over the line right now. Maybe you can convince me otherwise. Or maybe you can convince me, hey, the Ravens aren't going to be up for this after absolutely crushing the Lions. Like, those were the 2 things that I was looking at when I was trying to convince myself, yeah, maybe the Cardinals are the right side here. And I do think that the Ravens are a little bit overrated. Maybe right now, just because they've played some close games and some of their big wins haven't been as impressive as you might like. Like they crushed the Browns, but that was with DTR at quarterback. So I'm not reading into that one too much. But I think maybe they're not. They also might just be properly rated because their offense is starting to kind of kick into gear. The Todd Monken offense. That's what we saw against the Lions because Lamar Jackson looked very comfortable hanging in the pocket and just throwing downfield to whoever was open. And if he can do that every week, then the Ravens offense is going to be dangerous, especially if their run game continues to be good with Gus Edwards backing it. So right now I'm on the Ravens here. I just don't know that the Cardinals can keep pace with them. Josh Dobbs appears to have kind of hit a little bit of a wall. You kind of see that with backups who are pressed into starting roles long term, like they usually have end up falling off at some point. I think that's kind of where we're at. So got the Ravens penciled in, but go ahead and try to convince me why I should back the Cardinals if you'd like.
I don't really want to. I had the Cardinals pencil in just because I think this is the terrible spot for the Ravens coming off a big statement win against the Lions. Now they go across the country to play the Cardinals, like a non-conference team that they just really probably don't care about at all. So, I think that with the number here, this line was 7.5. Now it's 8.5. Like, 8 is like a 4th tier key number. So at least get that. Like, I don't know. Like, I think that just the lack of motivation here for Baltimore is a reason to take Arizona. But then again, you have Josh Dobbs against a top 5 defense in the NFL. So like Arizona doesn't seem appealing to me either. This is a game I'm not going to bet at all. If I had to bet, I think I would take Arizona first half, and I'm kind of kicking myself because I had this thought last week. I just didn't follow through with it. Arizona, for some reason, they just melt down in the second half. We saw it in the Giants game. I think they led against Washington in the first half. Against Seattle, they melted down last week. Against the Rams, they were up 9-6 and they ended up getting blown out. So like this Arizona team for some reason just can't hold things in the second half. Maybe it's tanking, like who knows? But they tend to play a lot better in the first half. So if you have any interest in this game, I would say Arizona first half. But yeah, I'm definitely not touching this one.
So, fun fact, this is the first time I think this has happened this season. I actually took the Cardinals in my notes, even though I wrote I'm done backing the Cardinals. I actually convinced myself that I should take them. It's for 0 units. So that's how much I don't want to bet the Cardinals. I completely misread my own notes about wanting to take the Cardinals, and I didn't believe that I had written it. So yeah, Cardinals 0 units. I have no interest in this game either.
Nice. All right, yeah, let's just move on. Nothing else to say about this one. Bears at the Chargers. Line open up Chargers -8.5. Still 8.5. Tyson Bagent coming off that win. Now he's playing on the road for the first time. Who do you like here?
Yeah, I'm gonna side with Secret Bagent Man's team
Nice.
at +8.5. Look, I get it. The Bears aren't great, but neither are the Chargers. The Chargers, look, I get that they have Justin Herbert. They have a lot of the sexy fantasy players. Keenan Allen's been good this year. They still have Austin Eckler. They have a ton of name recognition on that offense, but Brandon Staley is not a good head coach. Their defense has been continued to be bad. Maybe they'll be healthier. I think they're with coming off the bye. Maybe Joey Bosa will be healthy. But then again, maybe I'll start like sprouting pineapples out of my ears because I feel like we're saying maybe Joey Bosa will be healthy every single year, and it just never happens. So I'm not confident in the Chargers. You never really want to back them as big favorites too, because with Brandon Staley as a coach, they tend to kind of let things slip away when they have big leads. We had them as, I think, 5 or 6 point favorites. I talk about this game constantly on this podcast. We had them as like 6 point favorites over the Texans once, and they were leading comfortably the whole game. And they basically blew that, almost blew the cover, but got like a very fluky touchdown to secure the cover. So I am just worried about betting the Chargers with this high type of line. I know the Bears defense isn't good. This could be a get-right game for the Chargers offense. But the Chargers defense allows the 8th most points per game, 25.8 per game. So even if Tyson Bagent deals with any sort of rookie struggles, you're still talking about he should be able to get them to the 20-point plateau, or Deontay Foreman can help him get there too. So I'm going to back the Bears here. I'm going to back Bagent 0 until people start giving him the respect that he deserves. And I got to credit you. You went through and watched all of his preseason snaps and got a lot of look at him on tape and backed up all the stats that said that the Bears were the right side. And we 100% pounded that, and that was unequivocally the right play, going with a high upside quarterback against a guy who hasn't won a start since 2016. Like, it felt super easy, but games usually aren't that easy to pick when you have an unknown quarterback. So kudos to you, and I'm going to ride on the Bagent trade again.
Yeah, me too. I like to make my own lines and then kind of compare what the sports books put out. So like I make my spreads before I even see the lines, and I knew I was going to be way off in this. But I wasn't like, I didn't think I was going to be that off. I like, this is going to sound crazy to some people. So the spread is 8.5. I made the spread Chargers -2.5. So like I knew it was going to be less than. I knew it was going to be more than 3. I personally thought it was going to be like 4 or 4.5, just because like they're going to give the Chargers more than a field goal. Like they almost have to, just because like the Chargers have more name recognition and stuff like that, as you said. But like I give the Chargers like 0 points for being at home. Like they really have no business getting any points being at home. We actually had this question here by Carter. Does the fact that the Bagent has never played in limelights like this matter? I mean, like, is it really limelight? I feel like most of the crowd is gonna be Bears fans. It's gonna be like the home game like they had last week. Just because like the Chargers have no fans in LA. There's a bunch of Bears fans like living in LA. They're going to be going to the game, cheering for the team. Some fanatics may travel, but it's usually like the people who live in other cities, like being Bears fans. Like LA hadn't had a football team in so long. Like they're not going to suddenly like the Chargers, especially over the Rams, who were a lot better recently. So anyway, like this is basically going to be a home game for the Bears. So long story short, like I made this line 2.5, and if you think that's nuts, if you look at EPA numbers. EPA says the Chargers should be -1. So it's like way off. Like this line makes no sense. Like, how are the Chargers like 8.5 points better than the Bears on a neutral field? Like, that makes no sense to me. Yeah, the Chargers have Justin Herbert and Keenan Allen, but they don't have Mike Williams anymore, so that offense took a hit. And Herbert is not completely healthy. He missed Keenan Allen for touchdowns in 2 consecutive games. Now maybe he's going to be better with that fractured finger on his left hand, but he's not himself. And then the Chargers defense sucks. Like, they can stop the run pretty well, but like they can't stop the pass at all. And so like I think that Bagent is a guy who's like pretty accurate and releases the ball quickly. He can scramble. He's like, and he was like really good at Division II. So like he's just not coming out of nowhere. It's not like he was a bum like Tim Boyle it was. But like he's he's like he was really good in college, albeit like in against bad competition. But like the Chargers are not good competition defensively. So yeah, I love the Bears here, and also like this is one of my favorite like spots to fade. Like the Chargers are in a supreme fade spot. It's the dynamic where you have a team that was an underdog the previous week that like tried their hardest against a really tough opponent, the Chiefs. Like the Chargers put everything into that game. It was close for a while, and in the first half they went back and forth, but the Chiefs ended up winning. And now coming off that brutal game, the Chargers are now huge favorites over a team that they don't care about. Like, where is the energy going to come from in this game? Like, I just don't see the Chargers putting any effort into this game at all. Even their head coach says they have to start over. Like now that they're 2-4, like this team just has like there's no incentive for them to try hard in this game. It reminds me of the 2 games that we had earlier in this year. One was the Jaguars against the Texans, where they were coming off the similar game against the Chiefs, close for a while. They ended up losing. Then they were big favorites, and they just were a no-show against Houston, and they got blown out. The other game was the Redskins. They put everything into that Eagles game, lost in overtime. They were big favorites against the Bears. They got crushed. I think there's a good chance the Bears win outright. I'm going to bet them on the money line, and this is the second game I love this week.
Yeah, no, I might be right there with you on the money line vote because a lot of people seem to have the same opinion on the Chargers in my work call. Like we were just talking about the game straight up, not against the spread, but you know, one of my coworkers who I really respect was like, you know, if Tyson Bagent beats the Chargers, I forget what we were saying, but he's like, I don't think he's going to beat the Chargers, but like, you know, you hear that and you're like, I don't think like outright like, oh my God, he's definitely going to beat them. But I think the possibility exists more than people realize. I just think the Chargers are supremely overrated right now. And they could quit on Staley. Like I know we said the same thing about Eberflus, but at least the guys on that team, like Tyson Bagent is young and still proving himself. Like Justin Herbert and those guys don't have to prove himself as much. So that's kind of what's in my head about this one. Yeah, I just think this could be close. Never back the Chargers as big favorites.
Yeah, we had a comment here. Let's see. Matthias said Bears suck going with the Chargers. Well, the Chargers suck too. Like they're right next to each other metrics wise. I know Matthias's Vikings fan saying Bears suck, but believe me, if your team was in the AFC West, you'd be saying the Chargers suck too. They had nothing going for them. Even like their quarterback is great, like is injured. And like the Bears have like quietly, they've been playing better recently. Like even in that Vikings game that they lost, they held Minnesota to 12 offensive points. And it's like, okay, yeah, the Vikings are missing Justin Jefferson, but then we saw the Vikings light up the 49ers. And the Bears otherwise recently, they crushed the Raiders. And you might be saying, oh, they was just a backup for the Raiders, but like they beat the Raiders by 18, and the Chargers played the Raiders back up too, and they only won by 7. The Bears destroyed the Redskins. The Bears had a big lead on Denver. They blew it, but still, like they were up pretty big. So like Chicago has quietly been playing better lately, and the Chargers are just an overrated team, as you said. So yeah, this line is absurd. It should not be 8.5. It really should be less than 3, but like I said, I thought I'd see 4.5, not 8.5. I was like, what is going on here? Because like I said, I make my own lines. I was like, what am I really 6 points off? Like through all 3 key numbers? It's crazy.
Yeah, no, this is a 007 trap line is what we'll call it. I think I got all my secret agent jokes out, but yeah, it is us versus the chat on this one. I will caution though, last week I believe we were mostly the chat was mostly united against us on the Chiefs Chargers game, I think. So maybe we have a better read on the Chargers.
Maybe. It seems like a lot of people just like the Chargers for some reason, and I don't know, like the reasons for liking them are invalid because, like, yeah, people love Herbert, but he's injured. They love the receivers, but Mike Williams is out. They like Austin Eckler, but Eckler doesn't seem to be 100%, and they can't run the ball for some reason. Like, what's there to like about this team? This team sucks. Like, they're terribly coached. They have horrible defense. The quarterback's injured. They have trouble blocking at times. Their number 2 receivers out. They can't run the ball. Like, and they're favored by 8.5. Like, what? This makes no sense. Anyway, all right, we've harped long enough. We have one more game here. Then we're going to do Survivor pick teaser, and then I'm going to open up my Rainmaker pack. We have Raiders at the Lions. This line open up lines -7.5, it's up to 8. So who do you like here?
I literally wrote one line in my notes, and I usually write like 6 or 7 bullet points. I am not backing the Raiders against an angry Lions team with superior coaching coming off of an embarrassing loss. Enough said. So I'm basically going to leave that at that. The Lions are a very good team. They're coming off of a loss where they did not play well at all, but they'll bounce back, and the Raiders just don't have a very good defense. So we saw that against the Bears. I think the Lions will take advantage of that and kind of bully the Raiders for having been bullied by the Ravens themselves.
Yeah, Matthias saying Lions are frauds. I don't think so. I think that the Lions, I went against them last week, and I just thought it was a game that didn't matter to them. Like, they were coming off a win at Tampa, and then suddenly everyone was like, oh, Lions are going to the Super Bowl all of a sudden. And we're like, okay, we were saying that in the summer, and like, you suddenly think that because they beat the Buccaneers. Like, okay. And then you had the Ravens who are like, wait a second, we're playing a Super Bowl contender at home. Like, it feels like that really like fueled the Ravens for some reason, and it was a big statement game for Baltimore. Whereas like the Lions are like, oh, we're up 3 games in the division. Like, what does this matter? So the Lions were just no shows. The Ravens destroyed them. The Lions were embarrassed. Again, like, an element I love is backing good teams coming off embarrassing losses. I've stated this trend before. Not that I like trends, but it's kind of like this isn't like, definitely not a trend. It's more like an angle that you could take. So teams that have a winning percentage of 60 or higher coming off blowout losses, I identify blowouts as 24 or more. That's, it's 3 touchdowns and a field goal. So teams like that coming off blowout losses, they're 82-47 against the spread the following week. 64% cover rate. Sounds pretty good, right? Like, so I'm definitely going to be on Detroit. It feels like this line is low too. Like, the Raiders are terrible. They're a bottom 10 team in almost every regard. Their offense is bad. Jimmy Garoppolo is coming back, but he sucks. Like, the blocking's not there. Detroit's going to be able to sack him a lot. The Raiders can't run the ball. Like, Josh Jacobs had like 35 rushing yards last week. I saw like a metric saying that like Josh Jacobs had like the most fraudulent rushing yards this year. Like, so I was going to play him at DFS last week, and I backed off after hearing that. So like, this team can't play defense either. They can't rush the passer outside of Max Crosby. They can't stop the run. They can't stop the pass. Like, this team can't do anything. Whereas like the Lions are a legitimate Super Bowl team, despite what happened last week. So yeah, even if this line were like 10, I'd still be taking the Lions. 8 seems like way too short. My only worry is like the public is backing Detroit heavily right now, but things could change. So yeah, definitely gonna be on Detroit here.
Yeah, I can't find a reason to really like the Raiders. The thing I'm worried about too is if Jimmy Garoppolo comes back. He was out with a back injury, right? I'm not making that up.
Yeah, back. Yeah, he went to the hospital for it.
Yeah, so back injuries, they can sometimes recur, as we've seen in players before, and we've also seen Jimmy Garoppolo come back from injury and just put together an awful game. Where he just wasn't fully healthy, and he usually turns the ball over a lot in those games, which is how you know he's hurt, because it's very uncharacteristic of him. So even if he plays, I'd be worried about that aspect of that game unfolding.
Yeah, as someone with chronic back issues knows that these things could flare up. Like, my back would be feeling fine, and then like I'll like sit weirdly, and it's like, oh man, I can't move. And it's pretty rough times. Carter asking, Walt, do you have a favorite team or just whoever your money's on? Yeah, My favorite team is the one I'm betting on. I really don't have a favorite team. I just, when I was growing up, I lived in Philly. So I like the Eagles. Yeah, I'd root for them. The last time I ever rooted for the Eagles, I think except for betting wise, was I think in '02, the year that they lost in the NFC Championship to the Buccaneers. I thought they were the best team that year, but McNabb got hurt in week 12 that year. And then he came back for the playoffs after AJ Feely, I think, went 6-1 as a starter or something. But he just wasn't 100%. And then he threw a pick six to Rondé Barber, and the Buccaneers ended up winning the Super Bowl that year. That was the last time I rooted for the Eagles. After that, I started taking my site more seriously, and I'm like, man, I really don't care. I just I like rooting for the teams I'm betting on, and just I don't know. I felt like my childhood ended that day almost. Because I was I was so high on the Eagles that year, and just they just let me down. And I'm like why do I care about this? I don't care. I don't what are the Eagles winning have what does that do for me? I don't know. So anyway, that was the last time I rooted for a team that I didn't bet on.
Yeah, no, I'll still pull for the Boston teams, but when it comes to NFL, I root for myself being right more than anything else. That's all I really care about. Having a winning week's the number one important thing.
Yeah. But that said, Golden Glide asking, what is the coolest team logo? Man, that Eagles logo that they had Sunday night, I missed that one. The reason they changed to the other one is because they don't want to look like the Jets, but the Jets went darker green as well, almost. So, I feel like they can go back to it. I think that is the coolest logo. What do you think? Quick question here.
Yeah, I'm a fan of both Eagles logos. I love the Kelly green jerseys. I really think that teams should wear their throwback jerseys at least twice a year. I think they're great. I think the Vikings have a pretty cool logo. I like the Falcons logo too. Those are the ones that are standing out off the top of my head. I'm sure I'm missing something, but those ones are good.
Okay. All right. Let's get to our survivor picks. If I can find them. I didn't write down what you had last week. But yeah, I mean, you lost to the Eagles in week 6. So you had the Ravens, Bills, Niners, Chiefs, Dolphins, Eagles. Did you have Seattle last week?
I did. I had the Seahawks last week.
Okay, so I'm gonna write that in. So you can think about who you like for a second here. With those are your picks. My picks so far were Redskins, Bills, Chiefs, 49ers, Lions, Dolphins, Seahawks. Still somehow alive, even though in my big money pool I took Dallas in week 3 by accident. I must have been just delirious because I love the Chiefs. I said it so many times, and I think I picked Dallas by accident, unfortunately. So I'm out in that pool, but I'm still alive in my other pools. And this week I am going to be taking the Ravens. I know this is a bad spot, but man, Arizona is so bad. I just don't see them beating Baltimore. It's not like a situation where they beat Dallas because they won against Dallas because Dallas is down so many players. Now, if the Ravens have a ton of injuries, I'm going to change my pick. But again, there are a ton of options this week. I think Baltimore is the best one of the teams I have available. I'm looking at the teams still available. So even though I like the Bears, the Chargers are in consideration. I don't think I'd pick them, but they're a big favorite, so you at least have to consider them. The Dolphins, if you have them available, then you have to kind of think about them too. Bills, they're big favorites. Not crazy about how they're playing right now, but I think they're an okay choice. Chiefs, if they're available, for sure. Lions will definitely be another one if you have them too. So yeah, those are some of the options you can go this week. Also the Eagles. I have the Eagles available. So if the Ravens have a ton of injuries, out of nowhere, I'm probably going to switch to the Eagles. So who are you taking this week?
Yeah, I'm going to probably go with the Lions. I believe I still have them available, right? Because the mistake I made was not taking them week 5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're playing the Raiders this week. The Lions are coming off a massive loss, and they're going to bounce back. Good teams always do. And I just don't think the Raiders are very good. And Josh McDaniels, he does not move the needle for me at all. He's a good offensive coordinator for the Patriots, but he has proven time and time again that he's not up to the challenge as a head coach. And I think his inability to really decide on which backup quarterback he even wants to dress or start this season, I think tells you all you need to know. about his decisions there. So I think the Lions win outright for sure.
Yeah, McDaniels. And someone commented McDaniels can't coach his way out of a paper bag. I actually think they maybe said that about Brandon Staley, but either way, I think that's definitely true. So anyway, we have my survivor pick. I mentioned that my teaser pick, by the way, is we have Steelers 8.5 plus 8.5, Lions minus 2.5. Usually like to go up, but I can't find another team to go up with. Maybe Tennessee. Yeah, Steelers plus 8.5, Lions minus 2.5. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, Steelers plus 8.5. I like because I don't see the Jaguars fully blowing them out at home, and Lions minus 2.5. I'd be shocked if they don't win that game, and if I don't think it's going to be close. So I think this is a really good teaser to have this week.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's open up this Rainmaker pack that I got. This I made this one like via the craft and burn thing. So let's take a look at the what can get. So like you can kind of tell what's left. There's 15 unopened packs. I was looking at this with you before we started recording, and there was a Dalton Schultz available that it didn't want. That has been opened, so we can't get that. That's the good news. The bad news is that I wanted the AJ Brown, and that has been open as well. So kind of take the good with the bad. So of the players I can get, there are 3 Brandon Ayuks left, which is kind of bizarre. Then there's Ramondre Stevenson, Chris Olave, Calvin Ridley, Rashad White, Jalen Waddle, Amari Cooper, Mike Evans, Jeff Wilson Jr., Joe Mixon, Saquon Barkley, T. Higgins. Most of those are pretty good. Oh, it's Garrett Wilson left too. Most of those are pretty good. I definitely don't want Jeff Wilson Jr. I don't want Joe Mixon. I think he sucks. I don't want Ramondre Stevenson because he's losing touches to Zeke Elliott. So those are 3 out of 15 that I definitely do not want. I prefer not to have Rashad White, but I think I'd be okay with that. So rest are pretty good, right? Like I think out of all those left, I think I'd rather have I think I'd rather I don't know. I think I'd rather have Jalen Waddle almost. I don't have him. But what do you think? Who should I go over for?
I think Waddle has probably the highest upside. Did you say Mike Evans was on there too?
Yeah, here is, yeah.
He's so consistent. Like I would like him. I have a sneaking suspicion, not just because the numbers dictate this, but Brandon Ayuk has been haunting me this season. So my assumption is I've lost like 3 fantasy matchups that I didn't play or sit Ayuk in the right circumstances. So my assumption is we're going to get Ayuk.
Okay, well, let's see who we get. I got a legendary Ayuk in a pack last week. I think we're gonna get him too. I mean, obviously 3 in 15 chance. Let's see who we get. I hope it's not Jeff Wilson Jr. Nice. There we go.
Ah, there we go. All right, big win.
The guy wanted Jalen Waddle, so that's pretty sweet. So there we go. Pretty good. All right. So any other final thoughts? And if not, anything to plug?
No more final thoughts. You can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Camenker. I will tweet out my favorite picks every week. Thursday night we'll surely get picks. Sunday afternoon we'll surely get picks. If I go very cold on Sunday, I will not tweet any more picks, usually for the rest of the week, to spare you all the wrong picks. But rest assured that I will keep you guys posted on what's going on there. And you can check out sportingnews.com for all of your latest NFL stuff. I've got something dropping tomorrow. It might actually have already published. I don't know. About what a move that each contender should be making at the NFL trade deadline. We know most of them aren't going to happen, but I like to have a little bit of fun. And for those wondering what a contender is in this circumstance, I define it as one of 3 things. You have to either be leading your division within 1 game of the lead of your division, or you have to be the Cincinnati Bengals. Those were the three qualifiers. So yeah, that'll be dropping tomorrow. So keep an eye out for that.
I like that. I like that stipulation with the Bengals. I mean, that AFC North is a 4-horse race. It's kind of crazy. So it should be fun to watch at the end. I'm at walterfootball.com. We're going to have a show tomorrow with Kenny. I assume he didn't tell me that he's not available. So he'll be back tomorrow to talk DFS. Thursday, we're going to have Quacky Takes on for my Thursday Thoughts guest. So that'll be fun. And then Saturday, as usual, Saturday notes, preparing for the Sunday football day ahead. So please, once again, please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video. Visit the link in the description for the merch store. Jacob, great show today. Lots of agreements, but some disagreements. So that was fun to talk about. But I'm glad we agree on like our highest bets. It felt like so. Definitely. Hopefully that bodes well for our week 8 picks. Everyone else, if you don't listen to the other shows this week, good luck with your bets. Thanks again for everyone for commenting and watching, and I will talk to you later.
All right, sounds good. Talk to you soon.